Hey everyone, Jordan here with Flutes Loot. I'm joined today by Jake of J&J Tabletop, and today we're going to be talking about the 1D&D Unearthed Arcana for Paladin and Druid and other things. Jake, you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, like Jordan said, my name is Jake, and yeah, I'm from J&J Tabletop. I enjoy long walks on the beach, making bad jokes and things when I'm uncomfortable. And I enjoy spellcasting in D&D and TTRPGs, puns, dad jokes, and just just chatting with good folks like Jordan here. So yeah,
I
I think
enjoy
that'll do it.
I enjoy all of those things, so that's perfect. All right. So for everyone who is not familiar, 1D&D is the playtest for what Wizards of the Coast is not calling the next edition of D&D, but they consider it the next evolution of it. It's supposed to be backwards compatible and stuff. You can form your own opinions about that. I've expressed mine in the past. And so basically, what we're going to do is we're going to go through the document. I've taken notes already, and I forgot to return the PDF up to the top. So you're probably wondering why we're staring at
How
Searing's mic.
embarrassing.
But the first thing I want to say is uh, I'm definitely known for not liking the changes to the rogue in the Unearthed Arcana, and with every class that they drop, I just wonder why the rogue is so badly off, personally. Um,
Mm.
so it makes me sad. I just want to say it again. Save the rogue, everybody. So, um,
I'll,
Jake and I,
I'll join the movement.
yeah, join the movement. Thank you. um, I Jake and I have both reviewed this. The notes that you see are my own. We haven't compared notes yet, so this will be a very organic discussion between us. We did kind of give each other some just overall thoughts on things, but nothing specific. Do feel free to comment. This is definitely I like to have interactive chats with the live streams. Hey Balcamion, good to see you. Happy to be here. I've been looking forward to your take on these. I'm glad someone does, because honestly, I was a little deflated. After all the OGL stuff, I was like, I don't know, I just don't have the same enthusiasm
Yeah,
for these UAs, and so
deflated's a good word.
yeah, that's one reason I asked Jake. I was like, do you want to join me for this? Because I know that Jake will always be good for a conversation at least, and some socializing, which I
I
always
usually have an
enjoy.
opinion on most things, so
Yes.
so
Um, I do not know yet how much of 1D&D I will play. I still need to make time because I want to play things like Pathfinder 2e and Dungeon World. I was blanking on the name of it. Among other things, I recently was traveling and I thought, oh, I'm gonna read the free rules for Morkborg while I'm in the airport. And this is the second time I've tried reading TTRPG stuff while I'm in the airport, and I just can't do it. It's too dry while I'm in a very dry place, and I can't focus. I don't know what it is, but um,
does it put you to sleep? Like, is it a good thing to do on the plane?
um, I only tried it in the airport, and
Okay,
waiting for my flight, and it didn't go
yeah,
over. I don't know. I just couldn't zero in on it and focus. I don't know why, but
there's a lot going on.
yeah, and then the previous flight, I tried reading one of Cobalt Press's their Deep Magic book, and it's just reading spells on a plane. It's just dry reading, and I don't know. I have a hard time reading a book on a plane because of just the posture, and it's just I don't know. But enough about that. um, the point being, I really want to learn other TTRPGs and get into playing them. I did go to my friendly local game store and look for the basic Pathfinder stuff, and they were sold out. So that's how I feel.
Josh actually just, I don't know if it's still on Humble Bum. I always want to say Humble Bumble. That's
Humble
not
Bumble.
right. Humble Bundle. It's like saying Flutes Loot. Uh, Josh, I think he just went on Humble Bundle. I will find that link actually. I think I
I've
can.
seen that there's a whole. I actually have two tabs open on my computer right now for a bunch of Humble bundles for some stuff from someone. I forget. I'll need to look at the tab, and then the other one was a bunch of
Smooth.
Pathfinder stuff. I don't know if it was their basic rules, but their basic rules they're up on free online. I really have no excuse if I really want to, but I don't know. It's hard for me to try to make a video every week and write an article every week and learn a new
Yeah.
TTRPG system and be a dad and do my improv hobby, and so it adds
The
up.
struggle
That's
is
all.
real.
The struggle is
Yep.
real. Balcamian says, like you said, Flutes, it's our game. Be excited about it and how to integrate these changes into the game at your table. That's honestly how I feel. I feel like a lot of the changes to 1D&D right now reflect a lot of frustrations with the 5e system from the community. Whether they're handling it in like the best way is debatable, right? But it's fun to see Wizards of the Coast trying to tackle the flaws with the game they designed. Scott, hello. Good day to you as well from Australia.
Hey,
Always
Scott.
good to see you. So, Jake, anything else you want to premise before we get into this, or should we jump in?
I just think you described it really well, at least from the content creator standpoint. I mean, the
Yeah,
life of a content creator can be kind of chaotic to begin with, and then when you feel like you've kind of built your whole channel and content on something, and then that foundation is rocked,
yeah,
it could be intense.
yeah. I really, I'm glad you like the word deflated. I really think that
It's true
describes
because
it
it's
well.
just the momentum is like, like you get this like, you just I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Um, I'm glad that Flutes Loot is something that, like, it's not named like D&D Loot or something like that, So it's pretty easy to pivot to other things. I
Yeah,
really want to just post a video from the trip Opal and I just took where we saw some whales jump out of the water. I just want to post that and not just be limited to TTRPG stuff. But I don't know how people
sure.
respond to it. We'll see. Anyway, for now, let's jump in to the Paladin and Druid Unearthed Arcana.
Let's do
So
it.
so there's a lot of the same. I don't want to call it legalese, but the usual 4 words about like what is this playtest material. If anyone in the chat is not sure what it is, I'm happy to like stop and answer questions about that. But otherwise, I will assume most people kind of know what's going on with this already. If they're here, let me know if that's an incorrect assumption. So first up, let's see. My first note comes with the Druid. As you can see here, they no longer have any dead levels, and they debatably never did,
Mm,
but it used to be that there were often levels where you wouldn't see anything here with class features because they would level up and get a new level of spell slot. So they used to get their Druid subclass at level 2. Now it's at level 3. That's the standard they're designing around. And also at level 3, they get level 2 spell slots. So normally at level 2, they'd get their subclass, so they didn't need a feature, but they now have one. And then, so I just, that's something I noticed. Whether or not they're substantial or not is up to you. Like aquatic form is like wild shape. You can now do your aquatic form for swimming, where that used to kind of
hmm
just be baked into wild shape at level 2. And so you didn't need to see it in this table, but the table definitely looks like no dead levels now. Just
It looks
something I
better.
observed. Yeah.
And it is
It-
it is actually a more accurate representation, so that's good.
yeah, I do like when something at level 2 says this will get better at level 8, but someone, or like level 9, let's say, but the player's just referencing this table, they might forget that thing at level 2 got better at level 9. So I think it's good that everything should be
I agree.
reflected here. So kudos to them for that. All right, so first thing I noticed is there's no longer this laundry list of things that the Druid gets for weapon proficiencies. It's just simple weapons, short and sweet. They no longer get medium armor, but they no longer have the stipulation saying you don't wear metal as a Druid, which was obviously a hotly debated topic. So that's kind of an old school lore-based thing that modern players really don't care about. They really don't. And so,
That's a
um,
pattern.
yeah.
I'll just say it.
It is interesting that usually medium armor and shields come together. So it's interesting that they get light armor and shields without medium armor. Just a little detail
Yep,
worth noting.
I agree.
And then let's get into... So they now have channel nature, which is kind of similar to paladins and clerics with their channel divinity. But you channel nature. You can use it twice at first, and later on you can use it up to 4 times, and their capstones are based around like giving you at least 1 per encounter if you've run out, which is definitely less powerful than just unlimited wild shaping like it used to be. But is it
Yeah,
effectively the same for 1 per encounter? For a lot of people it might be. It's not just like infinite health each fight, especially because wild shape is different. So We'll get to that in a minute.
Yes.
But the first use
Sure
the first use for channel nature. Well, first of all, channel nature. How does it refresh? You can get them all back, all your uses of it, with a long rest, or you can get one back with a short rest.
I really like that distinction.
Yeah, I like that it makes short rests more usable.
Yep.
In general, because my perception that many seem to support, and that's where I've gained the perception, is many people don't really utilize short rests. They don't roll hit dice. They just mostly have maybe one encounter in an adventuring day, so they can just nova all their abilities, and then they long rest. So, pushing more for utility from the short rest is good, especially for DMs who do want to do multiple encounters. I am one of such of those DMs. I like seeing the players strapped for their resources and really feeling pushed to the edge. Yeah, glad we see the same. So, be a good discussion.
I feel like it's usually a little more emphasized on like dungeons and things like that, where it's a little bit more leveled, storied.
Yeah, for sure.
Those puns I mentioned about before.
like I'm a huge fan of Curse of Strahd, and there are several locations in there that I think lend well to stopping the whole just nova once and do a long rest mentality. So, and even if you're not in a dungeon, if there's just a lot of urgency in your world, where there's different things going on, or there's not a lot of safe places to rest, short rests really become more valuable. So I like that style.
Oh yeah.
I don't want to forget to check chat. 23 Stouffer, deflated is a good way to describe it. Yeah, I think a lot of people feel that way, and we're trying to fill things out. So I'm with you there. So I guess I should make sure, if I minimize, maybe when I bring it back, it might reappear for all of you. I'm still learning like what I can do while I'm streaming without ruining the stream. So Wild Shape, you use your magic action now, and it is technically a use of your channel nature. So you can transform like you used to. A certain number of hours equal to half your druid level. This is all pretty similar, and it ends early if you're incapacitated, die, that sort of thing. And then you can end it early as a bonus action. So the main way that this has changed is, well, there's a few ways. First, this is interesting. You can still speak when you become an animal now. And that is interesting, because that's often been a limitation. A lot of people, I DM'd for a few people who liked getting telepathy in one way or another from the feet or from a race like the Kalashtar, so that when they were wild shaped, they could communicate with people. And some of them liked to turn into like tiny beasts and be a spider on the wall and start telepathically messing with someone and thinking that there was like some god speaking to them. But it was just the spider on the wall, you know?
That's great. That's
so that will be ruined in a few ways with these changes. But but first of all, it is interesting that you retain the ability to speak. It's also interesting that you lose access to all your other features. So if you are a Kalashtar, you won't be able to use your telepathy anymore. You just completely lose that stuff. It used to be like a lot of gray areas about like what you keep in wild shape or not, which was more liberal than I think people realize at first glance. So it's a weird thing.
So if I was playing a forest gnome, or just a gnome, it's not just forest gnomes that get the magic resistance. I think it's all gnomes.
Mm-hmm.
If I was a gnome, I would lose that feature.
That's correct.
Gnomish druid.
Yep.
Oof. Okay.
Yeah, so that's an interesting change, and
yeah,
it removes a lot of the fun of people saying like, oh, I want to be this species for my character, and then use wild shape so I can kind of become these different forms of animals. So, but it definitely is future proofing and safer design for the game. It leaves a lot less weirdness for sure, which they definitely are trying to do that with 1D&D. They want to make things more friendly for new players. For experienced players who like digging into like all the different species and animals you can transform into and finding some fun there, that fun is going away if they keep the wild shape as it is now. So get in the survey when it comes out, and get in the comments, you know, the Brenly Mulligan meme. But the next up of things changed is it used to be you had 3 options for your equipment when you transformed with Wild Shape. One, you absorb it into you. It's just kind of gone and part of your animal form. The other is you can keep wearing it and using it if it makes sense. So like if you have a cloak of protection, you could become a pig with your cloak of protection. Or
super pig.
Yeah, or if you transform into a monkey with similar anatomy to your own, you could maybe keep your armor on. Or you could drop your equipment to the floor. Now you only have 2 options: drop the equipment or merge it into you. And it even specifically says equipment that merges with the form has no effect until you leave the form, so that they really want you to not benefit from your stuff while you wild shape.
Yeah.
That to me that seems clear. Do you take it that way as well?
Yeah, they are really trying to streamline what wild shape is. Historically, wild shape was not really a combat feature. It was more of a utility kind of a thing.
Well, yeah,
and
Moon Druid being the exception to that, but agreed for every other Druid.
And to me, that's what made Moon Druid fun and special. So if you can intuit what I feel about these changes, that probably is a good...
It's a complete mystery how you feel. One thing to note here is that they are pointing out that they heard the feedback that doing proficiency bonus times of uses of things and scaling like they did with the cleric is no go. So they basically put this note in here to be like, hey, we heard you, we're going to stop doing that. And that's good. I believe.
It works for some things, not all.
Yeah, agreed. You still learn Druidic. And there's going to be more with the wild shape a little bit later when we see the forms and a little bit more about how it works mechanically. But those are just what's we get so far. So level 1, we get Druidic. Let's see. I actually forgot to see if there's anything new here. I think this might be new, like the DC for like spotting it without magic. That's interesting. Yeah, that's what I think about that so far. Nothing too crazy. Let's go to chat real quick. 23 Stouffer. Yeah, not sure how I feel about a crocodile being able to speak common. That'll definitely be an interesting thing to see. Hey, Indestructible Boy. Taryn, how are you? Ted from Nerd Immersion. Man, I'm getting tongue-tied today. I shouldn't go on vacation anymore. Ted from Nerd Immersion just told me something hilariously bad about this wild shape template that makes this druid just the worst. You don't become a beast, you stay a human. Yep. That is one thing you're going to see. You don't change your creature type to beast. It just says you become an animal, but you still count as a humanoid. So you can't wild shape to stay safe from hold person, charm person, stuff like that. Yeah, that's correct. So it's I was actually just talking to Opal about that. I was like, isn't that so interesting? It's like you're becoming a beast, but you don't count as a beast. You still count as a humanoid. Which is also interesting if you are something like a satyr that is not a humanoid, you are a fae. You will remain a fae in beast form. And so that's an interesting thing. Balcamius
you're still you.
Yeah, you're still you. You just changed your shape. Let's see. Balcamian, I hate that the hit points are just your own. There's 0 buff to HP and good point in Destructible Boy. Yeah.
Preach.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's just get to that, I think. we'll come back to this other stuff.
We're going there. Wild
shape is the big one. All right. So you select an example animal or something else that is appropriate to the animal template that you're choosing now. So you no more going into the back of the player's handbook or monster manuals to find specific beasts and their stats. You just get these templates. So if you wanted to be a spider with spider climb and weave webs, you can't do that anymore. You can be a spider, but you will use animal of the land stats that doesn't have anything to do with webs. So interestingly, you can also choose a hybrid form. So you could be a jackalope.
You can be an owlbear, just like the movie.
Yep, you can be an owlbear.
That's how it goes.
And then you don't need to be the same size. So you could be a fully grown adult elephant, but be small size.
Yep.
This is actually really interesting to me. So you have to be small, medium, or large. And people pointed out that tiny isn't included here. And you have to wait until
that's a special
level.
Feature.
Yeah,
level 11.
Yeah, 11th level, you can become tiny for no more than 10 minutes, and the damage you deal in that form is halved. the 10-minute duration and becoming tiny at level 11. To me, this is actually fascinating because if you are not a moon druid, you're often using wild shape for utility, like you said, Jake. And I just described an example. So many times druid players will turn into something tiny to just go scout out an area. So it's kind of like it's kind of like wild shape is their use of Arcane Eye, the 4th level spell, but they can do it at 2nd level because they can be tiny and just kind of blend in and not be seen, you know?
I had this thing where I haven't done this, but I always wanted to be a druid, cast Flaming Sphere, turn into like a spider, and then just move the thing around in some enemy stronghold. And they're just like, what the heck is happening with this giant fireball?
You're just a spider.
Burning everything up.
Yeah.
And I'm just sitting there laughing.
Yeah, that's exactly the thing. So I think because that is a very common tactic and desire, for some reason they're latching onto it saying, let's not give them tiny until level 11, which I don't know. I think it's a fascinating change. I'm not saying if it's like good or bad. It just fascinates me that they're latching on to tiny being such a powerful thing for wild shape that they put it at 11th level and only for 10 minutes. So you can't just go scout out a whole dungeon in tiny form, which makes me wonder if they're going to change spells like Arcane Eye later on. We'll see because they haven't revealed that spell.
Some changes like that I found are done to preserve the special nature of something like perhaps Arcane Eye.
Mm-hmm.
But I also don't know. I don't know. I guess yeah, that's it. We'll see because there's still a lot left because we haven't had any warriors or mages, from the groups yet. So
yeah,
we shall see.
Yeah, let's kick it back to chat for a second. Taryn says, "LOL, it's like 100% an arbitrary mechanical check, nothing made for a better narrative." Yeah. Tabletop playlists. Hello, good to see you. There are some cool choices they're making for 1D&D, but based on what I've seen, I don't think I'll be switching to it from 5e. Yeah, I hear that more and more. Every time they release something, someone else is like, nah.
Right now, I'm with you. Yeah.
Scott says, Wild Shape, the new disguise self, as nothing really changes. Yeah, it does feel like you just kind of get disguise self with some perks. I want my pretend character to live out his desire to really be a beast, not just pretend, and the restriction on not being tiny till 13. I think you mean 11th level is ludicrous. It does feel a bit ludicrous. The druid is also putting themselves at risk with that, which is why you're not supposed to be able to cast spells as a beast in the 5e druid, being some bug dropping moonbeams. Yeah, exactly. There were checks in place.
The order. You'd have to cast a spell and then change, but still, it's a good point.
Yeah. Let's see. There were checks in place, and WotC's bucking those checks for some reason. Yeah, this new wild shape stuff really feels restrictive, in my opinion. How did everyone else get so buffed? There seemed to be a lot of bad changes for Druid. Yeah, Valky, I mean, I like those emojis.
Interestingly, I actually think the Druid got buffed. I think the Moon Druid got nerfed into the ground, but I think this is stronger combat-wise. Wild Shape now becomes a very tanky, viable way of playing the game, if you wanted.
It is super interesting, because in 5e, if you want to use Wild Shape for combat, you basically need to be Moon Druid. Otherwise, it's a waste of your time and your action economy, and probably just objectively worse. So this change, I mean, the Moon Druid will be better at using these in combat, but I guess you still could use them. If we could look at it for a second, jumping back, so remember I highlighted this, your creature type doesn't change, like Taryn brought up from Ted's stream. You continue to use your hit points and hit dice. I think this is the biggest nerf.
That's a huge change. In one of our games, we actually just fought an Archdruid, and I mean, I was like, it didn't even register to me at first. It turned into this fire elemental, and I have a custom spell that's kind of like an elemental smite, and I was like, I rolled a crit with it, and I was like, yeah, and it was like we dropped this thing really fast, and I was like, oh, well, I'm an idiot. Of course, he's still got all his hit points because it was like all we did was burn through one of his wild shapes.
Yeah, it's an
but that was
interesting
part of what
thing.
made it fun.
It can be very fun, and it's fun as a druid to have that buffer. I do want to kind of talk about this for a second, but let's go through each of these just to make sure we're all on the same page of what they do. So first, Animal of the Land. Your armor class is 10 plus your wisdom. That's the same for Animal of the Sea. Though Animal of the Sky is 8 plus your wisdom, so your armor class is lower as Animal of the Sky.
Interesting.
You get a 40 speed, so you're fast, and a climb speed at 5th level. So at first it's just 40 speed, and then
scale that
climb
wall as an
40.
elephant.
Yeah, yeah, you can. And then your strength and dex are equal to your wisdom score, and then you keep your con through mental ability scores intact. Dark vision, your proficiency bonus is the same, and you get keen sense, so your passive perception will go up, and any perception checks you make are done with advantage. Bestial strike, you get extra attack at 5th level, pretty standard. And the attack itself is 1d8 plus your wisdom modifier, so like shillelagh built into it, for bludgeoning, piercing, slashing, which is interesting because it's basically like saying what this says up here, like strength and dex equals wisdom modifier, so might as well just say wisdom here to avoid confusion. I guess that's fine. And then, so average damage, let's say at level 1 with this is like 7, so it's like a fighter using a D8 weapon with a shield, because you can use a shield, but not in your bestial form. So you can't use your light armor, but your armor class will probably go up, maybe, because you probably don't want more than a 14 dex as a druid if you even want to invest in dex, but your wisdom will go up.
Yeah,
so
I mean, you're not getting your magic items if you have protective magic items. You're probably doing studded leather or hide. So you're probably somewhat comparable, depending on...
Yeah, this is probably a +2 or +3 armor class if you turn into Animal of the Land. I'm just gonna like ballpark
unless you have a shield, but there's
the shield is the thing. So it might just make your armor class stay the same if you have a shield when you're not transformed. It'd be interesting if you just drop a shield on the ground and then turn into a monkey, so you don't have to like bring it into your form or drop it. But well, what does it say though? It said you cannot benefit from your equipment while you're wild shaped, right? Like it doesn't leave that open to interpretation. Equipment that merges. If it merges into you, you can't benefit from it. Otherwise, it falls to the ground. But if you pick it back up, maybe you can. Maybe you can still benefit from your cloak of protection. Just take it off for a second. I don't know. It's weird.
Excuse me while I wild shape. Do you mind if I pick up my equipment before we actually do this fight? Like the Skyrim, I'm going to eat 30 wheels of cheese.
Yeah.
Mid-combat kind of a thing. Yeah.
One moment. Strip naked, wild shape, and then get redressed in monkey form or something.
Yes, exactly.
I don't know. They're clearly trying to lawyer something away, and I don't know if it's working. So let's look at the other one. So sure. You continue to use your own hit points in all of them. Animal of the Sea is slower on land, but 40 at sea or in water. And you don't unlock this form until, what is it?
Level 8? Is it?
So aquatic form at level 7, aerial form level 9.
7.
So okay. I think it was level 6 and level 8 in 5e when you unlocked swim speed and flying speed with your wild shape.
It was 4 for swim, yeah.
Was it only 4? Wow, okay.
Yeah, actually have it side by side, yeah.
Perfect. Okay. I thought it was 6 for some reason. So it's much later. And then 1d6 damage instead of 1d8. So it's a little less damage, but you get the water utility. But more dark vision.
And no extra attack.
Oh, and no extra attack. Yeah, that is only for the Animal of the Land extra attack. Animal of the Sky. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is just, you're in... I mean... Duh, you're in the water, so I'm going to pick an Animal of the Sea.
Oh, wait,
That's
no.
Riveting commentary.
I was wrong. Sorry, Animal of the Sea does have multi-attack because you get this after level 5.
Oh, I see.
Yeah,
so... 2...
Yeah, okay, they all do. Okay, I missed that detail when I first read through this. So the reason they said Animal of the Land that has to have the 5th level feature to gain it is because you have this before 5th level. But if these come at level 7 and level 9, when you would already have extra attack, so they just baked it into the stat block. There. Okay, I missed that before. Read it too fast. Okay, so that is interesting.
Same.
So you could be doing spell casting while doing flyby, to do some quick attacks and stuff like that, which is
So
cool.
if you took your monkey example, and you can still speak, would you let, if you were the DM and a monkey druid wanted to cast a spell, would you let him?
Well, let's see. Because there is the beast spells at 17th level where you can bypass somatic and verbal components in beast form,
Sure.
and the wild shape itself says the intent. I think it says you can't cast spells, right?
Oh yeah,
Let's
rules
see.
as intended. Sure.
I
No,
think
this is
my gut is I would not let it until
yeah,
later levels. And also the moon druid would also be worth less if it, because it has that ability now in here in the document. We'll get to it, but it can cast abjuration spells while you're wild shaped, which are
yeah,
mostly healing spells now. They changed a lot of healing spells to abjuration, so you couldn't use
correct.
you. So if abjuration can be used, but you'd allow any druid to cast spells that are verbal, then every druid could cast healing word, and the moon druid isn't special. So that's like my gut reaction
The,
analyzing this, but I don't
sure.
know.
Yeah. I think to me, allowing them to speak just opens the door for all sorts of like my suspension of disbelief is in serious jeopardy. It's really where I'm just at with a
Yeah,
lot of these changes.
you can talk, but you can't cast talking spells. It's weird.
Like, well,
Maybe
I
you don't have your usual tongue that you're used to forming in just the right patterns. I don't know. Like
I
you can
guess
talk, but you sound like this because you're a pig. I don't know.
it's really weird.
I'm an octopus and I can talk somehow. um,
Yep.
but yeah, I get that. It's this part right here because spell casting is a feature, and so if you lose access to all your other features, that includes spell casting, and it says specifically such as the ability to cast spells. So they definitely don't want you to do that. But like you said,
Correct.
does it jive? That's really the question, right?
I get a little funny with that. Hey Fred, how you doing?
Oh, let me go to chat. Fred, welcome. How's it going? Let's see. And 23 silver, they have multi attack. Yeah, glad we realized that. Thanks for checking us. Yeah. Yeah, it's the subclass for the Moon Druid that says you can cast abjuration spells, 23 Stouffer. And then the Elephant Trunk, though, great at gripping cliff walls. Yeah, climbing walls with your elephant trunk. I mean, like the military has those like vacuums for climbing walls that some
Yeah, why not,
universities
right?
have developed, right? And maybe special properties you can choose. Yeah, so Balcamion, if I were to change this, I don't know if I would have such strict, like maybe keep the templates. Maybe that's fine. But maybe also give a list of features like spider climb or web or something like that that you can choose from. Like it'd be weird because you could also choose elephant with webs, so it becomes very like
I,
hybrid and strange, but maybe people would
I
be
feel
okay
like
with that. I don't know.
yeah, I feel like something along the lines of what they were doing with the latest version of the Ardling could work, where you have like maybe templates and then like a role sort of that you choose. I forget. I think somebody actually
Yeah.
mentioned that earlier in chat, and I don't want to not give them credit. But something along those lines, like if you're maybe a wolf has like a skirmisher kind of a role, or like a bear is like a tank kind of a role, whatever that kind of a
Yeah.
thing.
Balcamion mentioned like what if there were stat blocks for instead of just generic all land, what if there was a land scout or land brawler or land infiltrator? And I think that's the best way to meet in the middle between how wild shape used to be, where like you just get all the beasts and it's up to you to research and find what you can do, versus this like overly simple version without making like too modular. I think that would be a good middle ground, is to just have a few more templates for a little bit more specializations. Um,
Sure.
it's probably more page space than they want to use because they probably have to at least have 9 of them, I think, to really cover some bases. But yeah.
You're not wrong.
Warren says, I play Stars Druid and all my utility is gone for animal forms. um, yeah, that's a bummer. So all these talking animals in Icewind Dale are just new druids in hiding? Yeah, that's got to be what it is. That's why the animals
Love
are
that.
talking. It feels like Wild Shape. Hi, Andrew. It feels like Wild Shape would often just be worse. Consider early levels with a shield and shillelagh. HP, AC, and attack don't change. You just lose spellcasting equipment. Yay, Dark Vision. Yeah, so
Yeah, the only
it's
benefit is what you get extra movement. That's it.
Yeah, extra movement and yeah,
I
like you
guess
said, you
strength
could
and
use
dexterity too. You're kind of normalizing your ability scores here and there, and maybe perception checks.
yeah, because it's like, why not just use a shield and cast Shillelagh and attack with that? Um, it's a good question. I mean, Shillelagh doesn't
Keen
really,
senses, woo. Yeah.
yeah. um, I don't know. Why not both? Drop your Shillelagh on the ground and then watch it. Like, and so pick it up as a monkey,
Exactly.
and then you can then you have extra attack with your
Live
I
the
don't know.
Rafiki fantasy.
Yeah,
Bam.
It's Rafiki's time. That's exactly
Yes.
what it is. Yeah. And so, yeah, not sure about all this wild shape stuff. I don't have a strong opinion of like what is better or worse yet. I am inclined to
I
think that
do.
this is worse overall for experienced players, but newer players. I guess I should talk about this. I have never had like a batch of
Yeah.
new players where at least one person didn't pick Ranger and wanted to be a Beastmaster, and one person picked Druid and wanted to be a Moon Druid. So the
Sure.
so that person, I have to teach them, or at least hold their hand through spell casting, wild shaping with all the different beasts they can choose from, and probably a familiar now because of the Tasha's thing where druids can get a familiar because they usually want a pet. So
Yep.
those are three complicated things to help a new player through. And I cringe every time, and I know I will do it for them. I will do it for them, But I end up just saying, hey, I'm going to send you the spells that you probably want to have prepared. And I'm going to send you like a handful of stat blocks of creatures that you probably will care about. Let me know if
Just a
there's
few
more.
of the staples.
But yeah.
Sure.
So it's not
And
super
that's
hard.
I think that's a really interesting point about preparing spells, right? Because I remember when I was first playing, I had the first caster. The first two casters I played a wizard, then I played a cleric, and then I kind of was just like, I'm not sure if I'm having fun with the cleric, so I ended up switching over to a bard. And the fact that I just knew my spells, and that was it, was nice, clean, was good, and I don't really struggle with rules all that much because I kind of just immerse myself in what do I need to know before I go to the table. I know not every player is like that, but I also just think like they're moving everything so far, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jordan, I don't think I am, but so far every caster has prepared spells from 1D&D, right? Even the ranger,
Yeah,
right?
they prepare
So
cantrips too. So
so they're
that's on
yeah, so
purpose, I think, in
that's
an
not
interview.
that's not overwhelming choice. Why is learning 5 common animal stat blocks complicated? I guess I mean like on the one hand I understand the desire to want to make it simpler, but then on the other hand, I just feel like this takes away part of what makes the druid special and unique. And I don't know. I can't get behind it. Like I'm just I'm cranky about it, Jordan. I'm cranky.
Rightfully so. Rightfully so. I will also say that it's been easier for me to help that druid player I'm just describing that I have to help repeatedly as new players, because there are apps I can point them to where you can say, look, you could even filter to wild shape, and then you'll know what you can turn into. You can filter through that, and then it's up to you. Their D&D Beyond is pretty easy to filter to different spells, but there's just so many of them and there's usually a couple of trap ones anyway, or that will waste their reading time because they're more niche.
Sure.
Like the most recent one I did, I told her, here, prep absorb elements, and she got hit with the frost breath of the abominable yeti. It was taking like 50 cold damage, and she was gonna go down, and she was like, no, and I was like, but you have absorb elements, and she's like, so you kind of have to help them out even if they do have the spells, just help them remember things.
I don't think that's avoidable though. At least
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you might be able to mitigate it a little bit here and there, but
Yeah.
it's a new player. It's a new
Yeah.
player.
Mm-hmm.
It is what it is.
Yeah, so that's kind of what I'm getting at, is even if they streamline all the character options, there's certain comfort and knowing your options that new players just won't always have anyway. So there's always going to be a little bit of hand holding no matter what. 23 Stouffer says, keen senses, woo, sarcasm. Yeah, keen senses is so fun. Everyone looks forward to that. Phil, cheers. Hey, thanks for being here, Phil.
Hey, Phil.
Let's see. No martial arts, no long tooth benefit. Meh. Yeah. William, one of the first articles I wrote for Flutes Loot was kind of a callback to an inside joke from high school, but it was a character concept I called Monkey Fist, and it was just, druid monk, nothing special. Now that I've been part of like the YouTube sphere and like TTRPG discourse online, I know it's not that special to think, oh, it's kind of funny to get martial arts as wild shape. I thought it was pretty novel at the time, but those features. You couldn't do the long tooth you're talking about the shifter. So yeah, all that stuff of like combining it with your wild shape would be gone with this new way. The lack of HP buff has got to go. Sure, make it more static and narrow the range of options, but leave that core element alone, says Balcamion. Yeah, so that actually reminds me. I was thinking to myself, I was like, are there some tools that the Druid's going to have that will make up for the lack of new HP? And I thought of the new Bark Skin spell. So it's a bonus action to cast. It's concentration, but it gives you temporary HP every turn.
Every turn, yeah. Kind of like heroism.
Yeah, so that could be helpful. Usually you don't want to, if you're concentrating on the spell, you don't want to be the one running in and losing concentration because you ran in and people walloped you. But I was just trying to think to myself, I was like, would that help make up for this if at 3rd level you have Bark Skin, you cast it on yourself as a bonus action, and then you action Wild Shape? That really takes up a whole turn of action economy. But is it worth it?
If you're a Moon Druid, you could probably even, as a Moon Druid, you could probably even do that. It's got to be an abjuration spell.
It's transmutation. I looked because I had that exact thought process.
Really?
I was, yeah. So, so you're transmuting to the bark. So, like, it makes sense. Like, I could also see it being abjuration. But part of me was like, is abjuration the right thing? It seems like they just want the Moon Druid to be able to heal while a Moon Druid. And I'm like, is that the thing? Is that the thing?
It seems to me that they know they nerfed Moon Druid into the ground.
Yeah.
We got to give them something.
Yeah. That's what the Moon Druid wanted to be doing. They wanted to heal people. That's why they're Moon Druid. Fred says, I am sick of a difference between prepared and known spells. Yeah. I'm not sure how I feel about that. And especially that you have to prepare things based on the level. You can't just like prepare whatever you want. It seems too much.
Yeah.
Valcamian says, I haven't thought much about that, Fred. How would you rather it be? Fred says, ditch fancy and magic. If you know a spell, you can cast it. Okay, SDM. Hey, Dennis. How's it going?
Yeah,
I know those handsome mugs. Aw, thanks,
right back
Dennis.
at you, pal.
Kung Fu Panda. Hi, Dennis. Sounds way too reasonable. We've got to keep it complicated. Hey, Fred. Survey shouting out about Barkskin Abjuration is worth commentary. Yeah, thanks for calling that out, Phil. If the Druid doesn't get to buff their HP, then they got to do something to... If they made Barkskin cooler while making spells like Aid not as cool. But
they made it viable.
Yeah, so it's like... I agree. It made Barkskin viable because... It wasn't. So I was very happy with it. But so far, now seeing the Druid, I'm like, what am I going to do with Barkskin? I'm not sure. So
but surely
I'd like to know more.
Be part of their repertoire. I mean, you're a Druid. You're using nature.
Yeah. Right now, the flow I could picture is your 3rd level, you cast Flaming Sphere as a bonus action, and then maybe you transform to Animal of the Land to get your mobility going. And so you've got your spell going, you're transformed, and then the next turn you bonus action. Well, no, because that's concentration still. So if you Barkskin, you would end your Flaming Sphere. So that doesn't work. So yeah, the first
Barkskin is concentration.
It is concentration.
I'm sorry if I missed it. Yeah.
Yeah, I noticed they don't have Barkskin in this UA. Very interesting. I was like, why? I think it was well received. Yeah. So they didn't keep Barkskin in this. I had to go to the cleric one to see what Barkskin does now, but. Yeah.
It's a good call.
Yeah. Watsy has a hard time seeing the big picture when creating options. Yeah, it sure seems like it, huh? Like we're kind of trying. I think we're all hungry to see the big picture here of like maybe this wild shape is fine because there's going to be 1 or 2 first level spells that synergize with it and make you more survivable that people are going to love. I don't know. So
yeah.
Fred says, what does a Moon Druid have to do with the moon? Yeah, it's definitely like the lycanthrope sort of thing as far as I can tell of like the moon makes you transform. That's how I've always interpreted it, at least. Andrew says werewolves. Yeah, like I think that's the kind of theme behind it. So let me So that's wild shape a little bit. um, let's see what else the Druid got. And yeah, so we got through that. There's the different spell levels you have to prepare. I just highlight that red because I just don't like it every time. Nature's Aid. So now channel nature, you get a second option. Well, you get 3 options at level 2 because first you had wild shape at level 1. Now you can do healing blossoms. Pick a point within 30 feet, 10-foot sphere, and you roll a number of d4s equal to your wisdom modifier. So at level 2, let's say that's 3d4. So you're probably going to roll like 6 or 7 hit points.
Yep, somewhere in that range. Yep.
And you distribute that amongst people in the sphere. So you don't heal them all by the same amount. It's kind of like you have a pool of hit points to hand out. So if there's a bunch of people who are down at 0 hit points, it's a good way to bring them back up. Like a little mass healing word, but it takes an action instead of a bonus action. Go ahead.
This actually prompted. I had a tweet yesterday, and Caleb Blanco had a funny response. But I said, imagine if someday Wizards of the Coast just comes out and says 4E was the plan all along. We just needed to take the long game to get everyone to see it. And like this healing blossoms kind of is like, oh, this is just like inspiring word and all of the leader features that would let people heal back in 4E because they gave clerics a channel divinity that could heal. It's like, oh, that's just what we do. We have And I understand wanting to have more options for things because it is one of the cool things about being a caster is you have spells. You don't want to necessarily have to save them for healing.
Yeah. It's
but there's just something about it that feels very 4E to me.
Yeah, I haven't played 4E, but I've heard a lot about it, so I kind of know the play feel it was going for. But I always know when something is probably a 4E element when it feels like when I've played Gloomhaven, the board game, because that it basically plays like a 4E battle simulator.
Sure.
Very interestingly. And so this definitely feels like it would have been one of the cards I drew in Gloomhaven, and I would have been saving it like, oh, I want to do the Healing Blossom now to heal my allies in a 10-foot area. That just very much feels like 4E Gloomhaven sort of thing. So it won't scale because it's just your Wisdom modifier. Well, it will a little bit. Your Wisdom modifier is not going to get up to a crazy amount. It's just D4s, and it's just a 10-foot radius sphere. So how often do you know 2 of your allies to be downed within such a small area? I don't know the answer.
This is just being able to twin Healing Word as a Divine Soul Sorcerer.
Yeah, basically.
Kind of.
And then
but in the right situation could be really clutch. Sure.
Could be clutch. That every design is okay if it could be clutch, right?
Yes.
I mean this is. Yeah, it's definitely fine to have this, I would say. Like, it's not inherently bad. It's just, like, not exciting, so. Especially
because it shares a resource with something else that's more universally useful, like Wild Shape.
Yes, I agree.
So you don't have to use this. And that's a few homebrew subclasses that I've made. I think usually I get an idea of, like, this is really fun for an idea or feature. But it's pretty niche, so I know what I'll do. I'll just make a feature that can be used once, but you have 3 options in it. And if that situation shows up, you're a superhero. Otherwise, you still have this reliable thing that doesn't feel like you wasted it.
Yeah. The other thing here is Wild Companion, so you can cast Find Familiar, which is included in this UA. We get a look at Find Familiar, so I'll go look at that in a second. And there's different options for it, and it says you have to pick Fae in this case if you cast it in this way. And it only lasts until your long rest. So basically you can always cast Find Familiar probably when you complete a long rest. Keep your familiar active, basically, is how I interpret this. And is it an action? No, I think it still takes... So as a magic action, you expend a use of your channel and cast... So I think you still have to cast it for the 1 hour, I assume.
As a magic action, you expend a use of your channel nature and cast the Find Familiar spell. I think that without material components, I think it's just an action for you.
Yeah.
Because it uses one of those resources. That's how I interpret it.
Yeah, I want to... What this mean? I'm going to make a note for myself. Need an hour? Question mark. All right. So yeah, interesting. We'll look at Find Familiar in a little bit. Okay, so the Druid, then we get climb speed and multi-attack at level 5 for the thing. Aquatic form, aerial form. Tiny, we kind of talked about that before, but basically I think Tiny, when you're not a Moon Druid, is probably the most used thing of Wild Shape, unless you're... Cause I think, isn't a cat tiny? A cat's not tiny, it's just small, right? But, things like the spider we talked about, like just being a fly on the wall,
Little
those
mouse.
sorts of things. Yeah. Your own little arcane. I guess, especially now, when they get Wild Shape at level 1, you could basically be your own arcane eye for an hour. Yeah. Anyway,
I think a lot of the changes, if I'm just taking a step back and looking, are designed to stop letting players have ways to exploit rules and just ruin DM plans, like whether it's a big boss with a supernova, like we'll probably talk about with Paladins later, and things like what you just mentioned, Arcane Eye.
Yeah.
At level 1.
Trennel83 in the chat just mentioned that Web and Spider Climb are not on the primal spell list. Let me go look for that, because that is really surprising if they are not. All right, primal. Web's level 2.
Traditionally, they've been arcane. Traditionally, no?
Web is not there. And they get elemental weapon, he said. And then what was it? Spider Climb was the other one. Yeah, they're not on there. Huh. Could someone look that up? Do Druids currently have the chance to cast Web and Spider Climb? Because that would surprise me if in 5e they can't. That would surprise me.
I don't think they can.
Sure seems like they should. Just off the top of my head.
It's not for Web.
Spider Climb's not on there. Now you're checking Web.
Neither of them.
I'm going to make a note then for myself for when I give feedback on this. By the way, I did mark all the spells that are Abjuration just on the primal list so that we know what the Moon Druid can cast. So there's no... Let me put a comment here. Web and Spider Climb, please. Yeah, because especially if you can't turn into a spider now, at least give us the spell so you can do Beast of the Land or whatever, it's Animal of the Land. But give yourself Spider Climb so you're a little bit more spidery. Yeah, I think they should consider that change. Good note.
Totally
good call
agree.
out. But yeah, chat was active. Let me see what everyone's been saying. Moon's Classic Celtic Association... so tongue-tied today. Classic Celtic associations with change and transformations. Yeah, for sure. That sounds cool, Werewolf. Did Wizard of the Coast do that in the UA? Fred's being cheeky. I see you. Let's see. Should be able to add features to Wild Shape based on School of Magic. That would be cool. I'd love this Wild Shape if they had a list of options that added 1 or 2 abilities. Yeah. Hybrid form. Yeah. Moon Druid. I'd rather see them into beast stuff. When are you rewriting the 5e classes, Jordan? I actually started doing that 3 years ago, like right when COVID lockdown started. I got pretty deep into fighter and sorcerer, but I started to get the vibe they were just gonna make a new edition, and I was like, do I really want to do this? and I was still like,
it's a big undertaking.
Yeah, and I was still kind of getting my feet wet with like home brewing and designing, and so I feel like I'm starting to kind of get my sea legs with that kind of stuff. So maybe I should undertake it now. Maybe that would be a fun stream sometime of like how I would change the fighter. But
sure,
yeah. Let's see. Druid. Behold, this crit is mourning the Druid. Yeah. Let's see. Circle Land. Underdark can cast Web. Yeah, that's interesting. Circle of the Land could cast Web with Underdark choice. Let's see. Yeah, and Terran, he's doing his own Vagabond system. Not really interested in a 5e rework anymore. Maybe Transmutation would be the go-to spells for Moon Druid instead of Abjuration. Yeah, I don't see a Moon Druid player being like, I want to heal people. That's why I picked Moon Druid. So I think they should be able to cast Transmutation spells while they're transformed.
Or they could have just left it alone because it was fine. That's where I am.
Or yeah.
Or it wasn't broken. So why are we fixing it?
Let's see. So Fred, you technically can turn into a spider, but you just won't be able to do spider things. so
You can
so
look like a spider.
you are
You still
flavored.
sound like a person.
You are flavored as a spider. You could be a spider boxing
Yeah.
people, but you're not
Oh
biting them
yeah.
with poison. You're not weaving
Nope.
webs or nothing like that. So I would say you are not turning into a spider, but they definitely want you to think you can flavor it that way. I don't see a moon druid ever in 1D&D. Yeah, I never heard of anyone complaining about turning into a tiny beast.
Totally agree,
Yeah,
Inspector Boy.
yeah, the tiny beast thing is definitely like their design team thinks tiny is a big advantage. It took them so long to even give you the option to be a small species, and they they had to make it like you can be medium or small.
You know, how
So
you mitigate that? Stealth checks.
yeah,
Eventually, you're gonna fail a stealth check. It's a risk.
yeah, tiny beast
That's not.
still got to be stealthy, right? Or at least
Of
be
course.
unnoticed. At least be unnoticed or unbothering, like a fly on the wall in a
People notice mice
shack.
and rats. It happens.
Yeah, you're just incognito, All right, so let's finish up these druids features. So later on, when you use wild shape, you can also, as part of that, use healing blossoms. Wahoo! And then later on, you can cast spells in wild shape form. That's something we've already been used to. And then archdruid is body aging slowly, and when you roll initiative, you get a channel nature ability back usage. And then I do like what they're doing with the epic boons now. They're saying, okay, you get a +2 and you can go above 20 to an ability score, and then you get an epic boon. And the epic boons they give us are I like them. I like that they come with another +1, so basically you get +3 to go above 20 when you reach level 20. And you get a cool feat. One of them basically makes it so you have a 25% chance to retain a spell slot of 4th level or lower when you cast a spell, which I think is great. The other one is kind of weird because, I guess let's just go to them instead of just trusting everyone's looked at them already. So they're for mage or priest group only so far. And one is what I just mentioned, like you roll a d4 if you cast a spell of 1st through 4th level. And if you roll the same number as the spell slot you used, you get to keep the spell slot. And then the other one is Improved Fate, where if someone fails a d20 test, you can roll 2d4 and use a bonus or penalty, which is weird. It's like, I don't know why you'd want to do a penalty if they already failed, unless you were like in Pathfinder where like there's different thresholds, I guess, of failure, which I guess could still be a thing. So maybe they're just keeping that option open because they're not sure what they'll do with that. But give them a bonus to potentially succeed, and you get 8 uses of it. Holy cow. So...
it's a lot.
These are feeling a bit more epic now, so I like that. Coming with stat boosts in and of itself makes it feel a lot better.
And exceeding 20,
yeah, going above 20 specifically feels pretty cool. So yeah, that's the druid, essentially. Oh, but then there's Circle of the Moon. So for everyone's reference, you can cast any spell you currently have prepared from the Abjuration School if it doesn't require a material component. So, like we were saying, like you can do spells like Healing Word that are only verbal. You can do Quick Attack, which is the unarmed strike you transform with. You can use again as a bonus action. So at later levels, you do have the chance to do 3 attacks per round.
Yeah.
Which is fine. I put Pikachu using Quick Attack there because I thought it was funny. It was just called Quick Attack. And then Swift Transformation is normal. You can do a bonus action as a Moon Druid to transform instead of an action like other Druids have to.
Sure.
And then you don't make your attacks magical. You can just change them to Acid, Cold, Fire, Lightning, or Thunder. When you do, you gain resistance to that damage type, and your attacks can deal that damage type instead of the normal. So you can become Jolteon. Because I used to have some, like... There's some multi-classes that I'd almost never do unless I was just doing like a one-shot and it sounded fun, where I would do like the Storm Herald Barbarian, where you can create like a little storm around yourself and then do some Druid levels. So you could basically be a Pokemon like Jolteon and have like be a fox and have lightning around you and that sort of thing, So I think it's kind of cool that they're focusing more on elemental wild shaping. I think it's cooler than just saying they're magical now with your attacks. And so Yeah, and your form displays it too, so you can be Jolteon with lightning around you, Flareon with fire around you. I kind of like that. I'll just say that.
Yeah, I think it's fun flavor, and you got to do something because
Yeah,
the Circle of the Moon is no longer special.
yeah.
But I do think you mentioning multi-classing is interesting too, because now at level 1
yeah,
with Wild Shape, I mean it does kind of become at least a temptation. Maybe you're a cleric or a monk or something, and you have wisdom that's up in the mix there for you, and you might, I don't know, you might consider it.
yeah. It's a who knows? It's a level 1 feature. It's interesting. Another thing. I'm losing my train of thought here. What was I gonna say? Oh, from just like a design standpoint. So druids are a D8 hit point class, which is typically backline or midliner type material. The like rogue is a D8, monk is a D8, but monks and rogues both have like a disengage option, so they can, if they do need to go into melee or someone gets up in their grill, they can get away. The druid in wild shape, unless it's that flying form with flyby, does not have a mechanism to get away, and they're not buffing their hit points with wild shape anymore. So their armor class is pretty low. They have a D8 hit point. They don't, not that we know of, we don't see like a great way for them to like mitigate their defenses or the damage they're taking. Like even the bark skin example, it feels clumsy in the action economy. Like maybe it takes 2 or 3 rounds to like really get that going, while still making attacks. And so it just seems weird that they are enabling you to go into melee and get yourself killed as a druid because wild shape sounded cool to you.
Yeah, this has been one of those things where a lot of people love the Blade Singer Wizard. I think it just encourages the opposite of what you should be doing as a wizard. Like you still need a D6. Like I know you can bump your AC up way high, but all you need is some saving throw effect, and you're gonna get wrecked.
Yeah,
and I don't know. There's something. This is very disconnected to me. Like you said, the cool part about being a Circle of the Moon Druid, which was unique, that it was the combat feature. It was like you like the Swiss Army knife. You need a tank. All right, I'll turn into now you can't even turn into an elemental, which was another thing that was really cool. I want to be the thing, and it's clobbering time. I want to get in there. Like I want to start doing my deal. I just I don't know. I feel like the druid. I just don't like it. It's just not my cup of tea.
The other thing with the elementals,
I would play the original druid in one of those things where, if that was I think a lot of even people, and specifically in this chat, don't think it's very backwards compatible. But I would still be like, let's make that work because that's what I want to do.
Yeah, the elemental shape change was always a pretty cool upgrade to wild shape for the moon druid, because they have resistances, they have a lot of cool utility, they're formidable, not necessarily like the best damage output for a 10th level player character, but still really cool stuff you could do with that. And so now it's just like you can kind of do elemental stuff. Here at level 10 you can upgrade your attacks to always get an extra d6 for your bestial strike,
extra
which
damage. Like a little hex almost, or Hunter's Mark, sort of.
Yeah, and it's not once per turn. It's all your attacks with your bestial strike, and then later it's 2d6. So later on, you're rolling like 3 dice per attack plus your wisdom modifier, which considering in 1D&D they're definitely trying to like rein in the damage. That's actually some pretty decent scaling for damage output. The problem is just you're gonna die in melee. So you kind of have to do the flyby aerial one later on so that you can be in and out. But I can see it working at that point.
Yeah.
At 14th level, 1,000 forms. This used to be a thing that they could get already, the Moon Druid, so this is kind of consistent. You can cast Alter Self without a spell slot. That's cool. But considering how Wild Shape works now, that makes this feel extra underwhelming. But at least with Alter Self, you could give yourself Spider Climb, because you don't have
so now
Spider Climb as a
can
spell.
Actually climb.
Yeah, because you can get a climbing speed.
It is a climb speed. I'm just saying.
Yeah,
it's just funny.
Yeah, the landform can already climb on its own by this level. So I'm like, I don't know what I'm gonna do with this. 14th level it feels really underwhelming. So that was just
it does
my thought
when
on
combined.
Yeah, in the big picture, I
The
don't. I
synergy
don't
is
get it.
awful.
Yeah, I don't like it. I'm gonna read it. I'm gonna read this thing. Bloop. All right. So
I feel
chats.
bad because I'm normally not this cranky when it comes to things.
It's okay to be cranky.
This is how I feel about it.
Midlife Dices. I liked your name for one thing, but yeah.
Oh yes.
Definitely. I think a lot of people are gonna keep playing 5e, especially if 1D&D doesn't wow them. Behold this crit. Lee says, why would you play a Moon Druid when you could just play another Primal Caster? Wild Shape is literally the reason you picked Druid. Yeah, pretty much. Don't see it being fully compatible. Yeah, so on the backwards compatible thing, I really think that only means they want you to think that you can still play these in old adventure modules from 5e. But that's kind of the case with any adventure module ever. And so I think I think they think they're being genuine when they say it's backwards compatible, but it doesn't match the mindset of us as the community and what backwards compatible means. And
can you help me understand that? Because
yeah.
I look at the mechanics and I think like you're still using your bounded accuracy, like all of those, armor classes largely the same. It's just if it's a different progression chart, I think that's a concept I usually struggle with when someone makes those points. I kind of remain unconvinced, but I'm always open to being wrong. My wife will tell me I'm wrong all the time.
So checking your question. Let me check your question first. Are you saying that you are of the you're waiting to be convinced that it is backwards compatible, or waiting to be convinced that it is not? And how can I address that?
Waiting to be convinced that it's not. So like when someone says, oh, this isn't backwards compatible, I want to understand that criticism because it's never made sense to me yet.
Yeah, I will say I'm biased because as soon as they made that claim, I thought it was BS. So I kind of am.
Maybe you're the perfect person to talk to.
So what do you picture when you picture something being backwards compatible? Just having bounded accuracy? Is that just what it is?
Just like if say I wanted to play. So for example, like I've already talked to Josh because I know the next time I play a main, like a longer campaign, I've wanted to play a Circle of the Moon Druid. And so I was like, I would never use this. He's like, oh no, you could use the original. Like that would be fine. I don't care. So like I don't understand how those things would be broken, I guess. Like is it too powerful? Is that it? Is it too weak? Is it not what makes it not compatible? So to me it's about just like power scaling, I guess, is probably the easiest way to describe my thought process.
So it's basically, I think the question is, can you just completely use 5e options as a player in a party that is using 1D&D options and the game won't break? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. I don't know if I have a great answer for you, to be honest. I haven't devoted a lot of thought to it because I've just been biased to my opinion. But basically,
most people are, whether they admit it or not.
Yeah, so let's say I'm a 5e Moon Druid, and I'm transforming into beasts and stuff as normal, like we've been doing with 5e. Would that play nicely in 1D&D? I'm not sure, for one thing, because 1D&D, for one thing, they're definitely reining in all the damage. So if you were doing 5e options, you'd probably be dealing a lot more damage, for one thing. Seemingly. I haven't run the numbers. I haven't made a character yet. So there's a little bit of a breakdown in that way. But
incomplete information too with fighters and stuff,
Yeah, but if the criteria for being backwards compatible is you could play a 5e character in a 1D&D campaign, I think you're fine to see it that way at this point. I don't see it breaking the game. At least nothing comes straight to mind. I haven't. Maybe 3 months ago I would have had a better example, but I haven't really thought about it in 3 months.
That's fine. Tara and I would love, like we tell him, the 1D&D Bard and 5e Bard 10th level disconnect. I would have to look that up. What's the 10th level Bard do? That's Magical Secrets, I believe. Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah. So I think it's definitely different, but I think you'll still find, Jake, that you would still be able to like play without like breaking the game. It's just the classes are very different from each other, and especially when you get into like feats, species, spells, it's gonna get pretty weird because the 5e version, you casting Barkskin, is gonna be different than the 1D&D version casting bark skin. So it feels like a stretch to say it's backwards compatible, but I can understand if you're of the opinion that I can play it so it seems backwards compatible.
I guess like okay, so I think you're saying because with the original Bard gets 3 subclass features, whereas 1D&D Bard now gets 4.
Yeah, as long as you don't mix the two at all, I think you're fine. So if that's your expectation, like backwards compatible, I think you're good so far from what I've seen. But if you wanted it to be backwards compatible in that you can kind of mix them, not sure. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't mix. But can you coexist? Probably, if that makes sense. I think that opinion is
I would.
Is
it
sound.
Would be. I guess if so, I guess if I hear you correctly, you're saying if you're going all in on the 5e Bard, or you're going all in on the 1D&D Bard, you'll be fine.
I think so. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
So far.
Okay.
To
that
me,
would be my thought too, which is where I've always been a little bit like, what is this about? Why are people saying I can't do this? Seems fine to me.
And I think the main problem is they don't define what backwards compatible means, and I think if they clarified what they mean, that would help a lot. Chat, you've been so active. Let me see what everyone's saying.
It's been great chat.
Let's see. I want to see if anyone has a question. By the way, the chat's pretty active, so make sure to mark say Jordan in all caps or a question in all caps, so I make sure I don't miss you in the chat. Otherwise, it seems like everyone's just having a good conversation.
Doofus. Right, yeah. Doofus. I'll put just like this. Hold on. Doofus. Boy.
Yeah.
Like that.
Let's see. And Lee seconds what you're saying. He says he's feeling very cranky about this UA too. Let's see.
I think it sounded like maybe I'm understanding a little better.
Oh, Phil does make a good point that the grappling rules. So I think that's what we really want to look at because thank you, Phil. This reminds me of a thought process from months ago. So the issue is going to be for the DM because if you make a 5e,
you really have to iron this out.
Like a 5e barbarian who has certain expectations for how grapple works. It's going to be different if you're using the 1D&D rules. And so if there's certain features that a barbarian has to gain advantage on something or whatever, but that mechanic is totally changed, then the barbarian can't even interact with that new rule appropriately and has a dead feature. I don't have anything specific in mind. I'm just being hypothetical.
That makes sense because if you're changing core mechanics of the game, then you do need to have a very good and detailed conversation during your session 0.
Yeah, there's that new dazed condition.
Like, this is something I want to do. How are we gonna accomplish this?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
If you can't agree, then maybe a different fantasy or character is best.
Yeah, and likewise, if you have a character in 1D&D playing in a 5e game, and you have an ability that gives you the dazed condition to inflict, is the DM going to use that? It's a new condition to introduce to 5e that really wouldn't be too hard. Not as difficult as completely changing grappling, pushing, shoving rules, but a 5e monk is probably going to need to use the new grappling, shove, push rules of 1D&D that would be well more suited to a 1D&D monk, but the 5e monk would struggle to try to use those. Just off the top of my head. Good call out, Phil. So that stuff to look for is the rules glossary stuff that invalidates 5e mechanics, I would say. And Taryn says, correct, at best you can run 1D&D characters in 5e adventures, and it's likely you can use them in the same party, but using same character options together just won't work. Yeah, I agree with that. Phil says, any core mechanic change will affect any class features that modify those mechanics. It's not just, does DC still work? Is there still bounded accuracy? It's the action economy too. Yeah. So a lot of stuff to consider, but yeah, Jake, you're not unreasonable.
No, I think I've just always been of the mindset where like things like Adventurers League and stuff like this is the official thing. I kind of go, official's different at my table. Like I just think we'll figure this out for our table.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. So that's usually my approach to it. But if you're trying, it's a different mindset, and I think that's fair.
Yeah,
Especially because I tend to, I mean, I glance at the rules glossary because I'm like, this is going to change 12 times before it becomes an actual thing. So I'm kind of like, I
yeah.
don't know. What does Flutes want me to vote for when I when I take the surveys? Believe it or not, that sometimes that actually is what I do. Uh,
You're not alone there. I've heard people be like, like at the end of a stream like this, people would be like, "So what do you think we should say in the survey?" Just to kind of
what are
like
we doing?
summarize. Yeah. One, it's a good review for this the stream, right? But two, sometimes people are like,
Absolutely.
what should I write down now so I don't forget when the survey
It's like the
opens up?
rogue. I don't know much, but Jordan said new rogue bad, old rogue good.
Yeah, that's why it's fun to talk about because some people are looking to be swayed, right? Um, and something just sparked an idea. So you brought up Adventurers League. So I feel bad for a lot of Adventurers League DMs because the more 5e has gone on, the harder it has become for them. And
Oh yeah, power creep is a thing.
not just power creep, but a lot of ambiguous rules that require a ruling, but they're supposed to do it the right way for Adventurers League. And what is the right way?
Right way.
Yeah. And so I've had people in my comment section who run Adventurers League who are often the most frustrated with 5e's ambiguous. Let the DM decide because it's like I'm not supposed to. Sort of is like
Yeah.
the
Do you
mentality there.
understand?
So that creates friction and it creates ire
Sure.
between players and DMs because they like, oh, my DM at the Adventures League didn't do this or didn't know all the rules well enough to do it the right way. So they.
Oh, I would be an awful Adventurers League DM. I would be like, I don't know, that sounds really fun. Like, I want to go do that thing. Let's explore this. And it would be like, but that's no.
Yeah, and if you for those who don't know, Adventurers League, there is a structure to it. It's not just people getting together in a game shop. There is like tracking what your players have done and like it's more structured and more like official, let's say. So, and some people really like that, but there's a give and take to it. So
I totally understand.
If you're an Adventurers League DM and you're now told this is backwards compatible and you get players from both systems trying to play with you, you just doubled your workload potentially, which was already pretty bloated as a DM.
And that's fair.
So that's also something to consider. So when they
I
say
think
backwards
that's fair.
compatible, it makes them sweat, the Adventurers League DMs. Like, please
Yeah.
no.
And obviously, this is a pretty important topic for the whole thing. So it's good to have these talks.
Yeah, Terrence says, yeah, we're not talking about a balance issue here. We're talking about character options just not designed to work with past stuff. Yeah, I stopped DMing Adventures League after Season 8's changes to magic items. JW Pasley, I'm pretty sure backwards compatibility is just for running old adventures. Yeah, I would bet that's what they're going to, if they ever define it, I think that's what they'll say. With 1D&D, if you are running a character, you can't use a subclass made in 5e. This is the mindset that I'm running with currently. Yeah, agreed. D&D 5e doesn't have enough DM procedures from turn to turn to assure consistent results at the table. True. Even 1e, when they created tournaments, had consistency issues. And some people like that, right? They don't want a DM who could be run by AI. I've heard people say that before. I've heard some people say that,
Yeah.
Mike Shea, Sly Flourish, he said when he ran D&D 4th edition, the players would basically be telling him what he needed to do, and the rules said what he needed to do, and he didn't really need to make any decisions because the rules like adjudicated it too much, and he said, I don't want to play this, just let the rules adjudicate everything for you, which I thought was a very interesting play experience that he got out of that. Would it be everyone's? I doubt it. But, yeah.
It's a very sharp change from what it traditionally been. I mean, I've played. It's getting close to. I'm a bit older than maybe people think. I've been playing close to 35 years now. So the idea of this is what official is. It's like while I understand it, it's still sometimes it takes a minute for me to wrap my head around. Oh yeah, okay, adventure. Yep, okay. You can't just do whatever you want when you have this very deep-rooted, agreed-upon standard that everybody is ascribing to, and that makes sense to me, even if it's not something I have interest in.
Yeah, for sure. And Fred, thanks for being here for the stream to support us, even though 1D&D isn't very interesting to you and your group. There's a reason Fred changed his name to How to RPG instead of How to D&D. Totally understand. There's so much in 1D&D that I love and have already implemented into my game, says Just the Craft. Exhaustion's a big win. People really like that one. Unarmed Strike changes, and you like the Wild Ship templates. I'm glad you like those. Balcamian Fred, what are you playing? Just the craft. I've been doing Wild Shape Temp for a year now. Oh, that's interesting. Temporary HP instead of just new HP. That's cool.
Or templates.
Well, if you've been doing the templates for a year, that's cool. I'd be interested to know where you got them or if you made them up yourself.
Yeah, I'd be curious to clarify which temp HP or templates.
Yeah. All right, let's go on to Paladin. So the stream isn't forever
we made
long,
it.
Right?
we're gonna get religious. Everybody, take out your
Yeah.
take out your tracts.
Once again, no dead levels here, right? It used to be that there were levels where your level up was getting a new spell slot level, but I don't see any dead levels here. So let's get into it. Lay on Hands only works for poisoned condition now, not disease. I wonder how much disease. Yeah, I wonder how much disease is going to be part of the game. We'll see.
I thought that would be more fun
to include diseases.
I think just as a whole, things like diseases, curses, poisons. I think Oh well, I cast Lesser Restoration. Okay.
Yeah.
I cast Greater Restoration. Done.
I really like using diseases and curses and stuff, especially when I ran Curse of Strahd. It was fun when they went into the swamp of Berez, for example, to have different
I'm gonna hear muffs now.
Oh yeah, no spoilers. I'm literally just saying, there is a swamp area in this place, and I chose to throw in some diseases. That's all I'm saying.
Gotcha.
So
yeah,
I enjoyed that, and the players thought they were fun diseases that I used to. I mean, fun, like they were interesting,
Well, the tension is part of what's fun.
Yeah, exactly.
It's yeah.
Again,
but it does get more powerful later on.
It does,
so,
yeah.
Lay on Hands.
Mm-hmm. So it's a core feature. It will scale a little bit, get new features for it, and there's always room for subclasses to beef them up in the future if they want to design around that too. So again, we're preparing spells, and you have to prepare them by spell level. And I think you do get cantrips, right, as a paladin now. Yep, cantrips. Yep.
I think that's true. Yeah.
And so the big talking point is Divine Smite. So
sure
is this objectively worse than just being a ranger and getting Hunter's Mark? Well, we don't know what Hunter's Mark is going to look like yet, but maybe. So first of all, it's after you hit with a target with an attack roll, which makes people wonder if this is going to include the ability to crit it, or if you deal your crit damage with your weapon and then you just throw in some Divine Smite afterwards that's not doubled by critical hit.
Well, that's
know.
The same, no?
And well, in 5e, if you crit on your attack and you choose to smite, you roll the smite damage twice, just like other crit. Kind of like with rogues in 5e, like the sneak attack is crit as well. So in 5e, Divine Smite, if you're rolling 2d8 for it, and you crit, you roll 4d8 instead.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'm
now,
sorry, were you saying it's different?
Yeah. So now it says after you hit a target with an attack roll. So
instead of when you hit?
Yeah. So it's like, is this saying it's an order of operations thing that's unclear? They'll probably clarify later because this is everyone's up in arms about this. Everyone likes a crit Divine Smite, right?
Oh man.
So
Yeah, that's the whole point.
Yeah. So is it just trying to make it clear that you get to see if the attack hits first? Which they should have worded it differently, or is it really saying like you're not critting on this anymore? Sorry, I don't know, but it's a point to probably put in the survey. And the other thing is it now works on ranged attacks, unarmed strikes.
Love that.
If you're using a siege weapon like a ballista or a catapult, that might qualify as well. I'm not sure.
That's a little weird, but okay.
Yeah, so it's interesting because paladins get heavy armor, and they'll also be, with the fighting style down here, you are eligible for the warrior's fighting style feat options.
Sure.
One of which will be archery. So you could be a +2 to your archery, to your ranged attacks paladin, which paladins couldn't currently do unless they took feats. And then they still couldn't smite with a ranged attack, right? And so you'll now be able to be a longbow using paladin who can smite with your bow. Or you can do unarmed strikes, my fists here holy and ghost, I don't know, but just to use a Christianity reference.
Oh my god.
But
That's fantastic.
but it's interesting because usually, so rangers and fighters are the other D10 classes. Fighters can use heavy armor and use bows, but most of them can't add a lot of damage to it like this smite option. Rangers could, but they only get medium armor. So now we're getting your heavy armor user, who later on you can ride a very formidable horse. So the paladin actually becomes like your classic like Mongolian archer on horseback. Plus you're smiting for extra damage. Plus you can get the feats to do more damage with sharpshooter, whatever it is, in the new D&D 1D&D. So I think that's interesting that they're opening that up. From a class design perspective, is that okay to keep them in heavy armor, super mobile, super long range, and dealing more damage? Is that going to be a little overtuned? Is that going to I don't know. So
I mean, heavy armor is already kind of a little broken, if you ask me. I personally would say you should have a speed penalty because you're in literal plate armor.
Well, even if you did, you're riding the steed from Fine Steed, which is really fast, and so you could be like this like lump who like can't even move with your heavy armor, and your horse is like heavy, and you're just like I don't know. I'm playing fun, but yeah, it's something to consider.
I think that's just one of the base critiques of 5e in general. It's just very binary. It's very like you have advantage, you don't have advantage. Like you're wearing heavy armor, you're not wearing heavy armor. Like that's to me that's the most valid base criticism of 5e.
Yeah.
So
a lot of people are frustrated with that.
If I'm just going to accept that, which is what you're doing if you're playing this game, then I think you are accepting things like mobile tanks that shoot radiant shelled arrows and things. I actually have a build in our Ancient Relics and Hokey Religions game where I just wanted to make a really weird character. So I made a dex-based Eldritch Knight that multi-classed into Warlock, and I now just unlocked Eldritch Smiting. I'm a level 5, so I'm going to be doing this very thing. And, I was like, I just want to play a really weird character, so that's what I came up with.
Yeah, it's a...
Should have just played a 1D&D Paladin. I'd have done it at level 2.
Yeah, easy. The other thing is you can only... Or it's still 2d8 for a first level spell slot and 1d8 for every level after that, but it no longer caps out. It used to cap out, I think, like at a 5th level spell slot.
That's a good reason for that.
Yeah, so...
Because you can only do once per turn.
Yeah, it is once per turn, but also if you multi-class with like a sorcerer, you could have potentially higher than 5th level spell slots. So if you wanted to, I don't recommend it, you could smite harder than the 5e smite because you have higher level spell slots. You could. Just not saying do it, but you could. And then it's once per turn, and you can't use it on the same turn that you cast a spell. And I swear, this is going to be the new confusing bonus action spell rule that I have to explain to all my players, no matter how long they've been playing, or remind them like, oh, you already... Mean? Yeah. I mean the... What do you mean? Like which rule do I mean, or are you just saying what the players would say?
That's what they'll be saying. Like I don't understand. What do you mean? I'm not casting a spell. It's like well you are.
Yeah. So they're
according to the rules.
They attack and cast Divine Smite, not cast Divine Smite. They add Divine Smite damage, and then they try to cast a bonus action spell or something, and you say you can't because of Divine Smite, and they're like, oh right, okay, like that's just gonna be a thing. It's gonna be a thing. I guarantee it.
Yep. And it's also designed to not have that stack with a smite spell. Yes,
that is true. So we'll get to those in a minute. Those are interesting.
Yeah.
Channel Divinity is comes a level later. It used to be you got Channel Divinity for basic stuff, and then immediately you get your subclass, and you usually had a new Channel Divinity option, which I always thought was such a dull thing. For those who don't know, Paladin is my least favorite 5e class, so I'm looking to be amazed here. You can use Channel Divinity twice, gain 1 use back with short rest, or all of them with long rest. You get Divine Sense as a bonus action, no longer an action, for the next 10 minutes.
I like that.
Yeah, me too. And it's no longer blocked by cover. And so 10 minutes, great. Cool.
Like that too.
I like Divine Sense. It's fine. And then Fine Steed. You always have it prepared, and you can cast it as an action once without expending a spell slot per long rest. And Fine Steed has been changed, and it's been included in this UA, so we'll see what that looks like a little bit later. But Fine Steed is very good, and it's a great reason to play a Paladin. So it's interesting to make it core to the Paladin so that new players don't miss, hey, Fine Steed's pretty good, because I think a lot of them hear Fine Steed and they think that sounds lame.
That's weird.
Like the name of it sounds sorry for saying lame. I'm working on my ableist language. The Fine Steed spell name doesn't sound exciting, so they probably don't even bother to read it, especially because it's long. But this is now saying, like, seriously, Fine Steed is great. You should probably be riding a steed if you can.
Well, that's one of the classic Paladin tropes from old school D&D.
Yeah, it really is.
Your warhorse.
Yeah,
and it was a very special bond.
Yeah, I would always try to have Fine Steed as a Paladin player. And recently I did that review of the Thaumaturge by Benjamin Huffman, and I pointed out that you could get Fine Steed with it, and to me that was exciting to think, like, oh, how can I use Fine Steed as a sorcerer now at like level 3? So that was fun for me. Fine Steed is a good spell. It is. So making it core is good. I know, like Taryn, I think you really didn't like the narrative of it, for example, and I know that not everyone likes this, but to me, I think it makes sense, honestly. So I'm down with it. Man, chat is so active. Is anyone talking to me,
awesome.
or are y'all just chatting?
Well, we got all caps Jordan and all caps Doofus Boy from Just the Craft. So probably
just the craft. The Fine Steed. Yeah. The Fine Steed free cast is a trap because it's cast at its lowest level, which makes the steed actually super weak. Okay, so yeah, that's the other thing is Fine Steed now scales differently. So let's go look.
Let me guess. There's 3 options to choose from.
let's go look at it. Let's see. Sure. It's going to be after here. Fine Steed. So usually it's 10 minutes to cast, and you summon your otherworldly steed. And because we had technical difficulties with my microphone, I actually meant to mark up the last things in here. This is actually where I haven't gotten in deep yet. But you choose the Celestial, Fey, or Fiend. Combat. It shares your initiative. Controlled mount. It takes a turn after yours independently. Oh, if you're incapacitated, it acts independently. I'm wondering if they're taking away the ability for it to act independently while you are active. I'm not sure. And then you dismiss it, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so when you upcast it, you basically are improving its stats. So at level 1, let's see what it looks like. I think it's going to be, so
you got 15 HP to start.
Yeah, my computer is freezing for a second. One moment. The scroll wheel is not working on my mouse all of a sudden, but I can do this. Okay. So armor class, 10 plus spell level. Okay. Oh, there I go. Okay. Hit points, 5 plus 10 per spell level. So 15 HP at level... Because you cast it at level 2, so it starts off with 25 HP. I think that makes it on par with what Fine Steed gives you already in 5e, because it uses the warhorse stats or something like that. It looks like Jake's looking it up. Thank you. Yeah, look up what Fine Steed gives you in lieu of stats to see how it compares. I notice if you use a 4th level spell or higher, it can fly. So I think they're getting rid of Find Greater Steed, which was added in Tasha's, which allows you to get like a Pegasus, which you could fly on. It's very good. So if you just use a 4th level spell slot now, you can get that fly speed. Otherwise, its speed is 60, which is obviously very fast. It has telepathy up to a mile with you. Telepathy is defined in this UA very specifically now. Life Bond.
Yeah.
Life Bond. When you regain hit points from a spell of 1st level or higher, the steed also gets healed. And the steed can actually heal you, I remember reading. So Healing Touch. So you can have the steed heal you, and then it also heals the steed, right?
Yeah, if you choose the Celestial version, yeah. Absolutely.
Oh, yes, because there's the 3 versions, yeah. So, but otherwise, healing you heals the steed by the same amount. If you're together.
Mm-hmm.
Otherworldly Maul. Melee spell attack, interestingly. Not a weapon attack, spell attack. 1d8 plus the spell's level of radiant damage. So it's really not a huge difference to your damage output.
No.
If you upcast it. Your spell attack modifier. So yeah, that's static. Your to hit chance is static. But it gets a little bit more damage if you upcast. Radiant, and then the damage type depends on the type of creature you chose. Does it still allow you to, like, if you cast a spell on yourself? I guess not. It used to be like, let's say you cast a spell on yourself, like just hypothetically Stone Skin, it would also affect the steed. But now it's only healing affects the steed. It's not just any spell. So Face Step is a teleport. Fell Glare is a chance to frighten, I assume. Yep. Until the end of your next turn. So it probably tries to use this every turn to keep refreshing the frightened condition. Because
I think you only get once per long rest.
Oh, you're right. Never mind.
But I mean, obviously, really nasty uses of fear can be awesome. And
yeah. Which, by the way, I actually have a note. Let's go back to the Paladin now, where one of my favorite Paladins. Paladin is still my least favorite class, but I do like the Conquest Paladin. And I like that all of a sudden...
Aura of Dread, is that it?
Yeah, you want to use the frightened condition as that Paladin, but you don't have a ton of options to do so. So I like that all of a sudden the Paladin in Fine Steed and in one of its features that we'll read here has more options to use the frightened condition. So just throwing that out there. Let's see. Oh, Fred says the Ranger in older editions of D&D would get a Pegasus, not the Paladin. So not a fan of that change. Interesting. Let's see. I like the aspect of different steed origins having distinctive traits. I think I like that too. You can kind of choose which one makes sense. Give a Paladin at higher levels an elephant. Yeah. I have a question, says Delta. Many people said that Paladin is very strong in 5e. Now when it's getting nerfed, people are not happy. I am quite new to D&D, so is all the nerfs, are they too much? So it depends who you ask. A lot of people consider Paladins to be very strong. I'm actually not of that opinion. I think they're normal, and I think Fighter is actually stronger than Paladin. Just throwing that out there. That's my biased opinion. Not totally biased.
As a raw damage dealer, I would absolutely agree. I think they're also extremely resilient. I don't think there's any more reliable damage dealer in the game than the Fighter.
Okay. Yeah, it's tough to outdamage the Fighter, and so Paladin gets a few more utility options because it has spell casting, but Smite is not actually like that big a deal compared to what the Fighter can do with feats and the right fighting style being specifically archery. Getting that +2 to make the sharpshooter feat give you effectively a -3 to hit instead of a -5 really can enhance the Fighter's damage output. So to your question, Delta, I don't consider the Paladin in need of a nerf. I know that some DMs and even other players could get frustrated when they don't have a lot of damage output and they see the Paladin using smites, but those spell slots are pretty valuable for Paladins and they get expended pretty quickly.
Yep.
So
and Phil just answered it so well.
Oh, bring it home, Phil. DMs that focus on single big boss fights are frustrated at burst damage, but having squads and anti-teams forces things like smite and stun to spread across the battle, removing the complaint. I completely agree. Yep.
We're actually, Josh and I have a video on the CR system and how it's supposed to be used coming out very soon. And the problem isn't the CR system. The problem isn't Paladins. The problem is understanding how it fits in the ecosystem. That's the problem. It's like stop. Like this is a critique I have. I haven't really watched much Critical Role as of this last year. But if I had $1 for every time I felt like I would see Matt Mercer throw just one boss creature at a party of 7.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you guys killed him in 2 turns. It's like,
no way.
It's one creature against 7. What do you think is going to happen? Like, I know that can be fun, but have other things to contend with. And I personally believe he's an outstanding DM. So I'm not I'm using that as just because it's a visible
Agreed.
example more than I am picking on him or anything like that. But that's really where that sort of a thing is. And
Yeah. On top of that, I'll add to what you and Phil are saying. If you are throwing a single boss fight and it's the only thing they fight all day, they have all their resources, they have action economy on their side, they're good. Like, they're gonna destroy.
Well, of course they're gonna go Nova. Go blast everything you got at them.
Yeah.
Take them down.
So back to
the
your
Paladin's awesome.
Yeah. So not to bury your question, Delta. I personally, who do not like the Paladin and don't think Divine Smite is a big selling point to play the Paladin, I actually like that they're trying new things with it, and that I don't mind if they feel like they have to rein in Divine Smite a little bit. I'm not about that. So I wouldn't say the nerfing is too much. I would actually say they're trying to give it more tools that make it more enticing for me to want to play it, but it's we'll see if it gets there for me. So hope that helps you with the question. I wouldn't take the I'm trying to think of a term that won't sound like I'm criticizing or belittling the criticisms, but people moaning about the nerfs. I'm not trying to belittle those concerns. That's just the word that I settled on. Are valid if they really like Divine Smite, right? And they like some of the Paladin stuff. Yeah. But I would not say like, oh, Paladin is dead or anything. Like, it's still better than it's still better than the one D&D rogue, which Taryn and I just saw your
Jordan
message.
On his soapbox.
Let's talk about the rogue again. But,
let's talk about the rogue.
Taryn just sent me. Taryn's writing his own his own TTRPG system called Vagabond, and he just sent me what the rogue is looking like in that. And Taryn, I'm really looking forward to reading that after this stream. So thank you.
That's awesome.
If someone makes a good rogue, all of a sudden I really want to play that system. I like rogues. So let's see. Upcasting should add more uses of mount special features. That's a good idea, because if it's just always right now, upcasting isn't that great except to get it flying. So it's
I like that. Yeah, so you could teleport more, you could heal more, do the fear thing.
Yeah, like make it like
I like that a lot.
The spell slot level you used above second gets you more uses. I think that makes total sense. Good idea, William. I'm going to mark that in my document with the fine steed. I want better upcasting.
Yeah, I mean, they say, like Just the Crest says, more health and AC, sure. But...
yeah. Agreed. All right.
Mm-hmm.
And then...
I get it.
Yeah. Catching up with chat a little bit here. Try to lower the damage per round. Rogue with sneak attack once per round, and Paladin smite once per turn. Yeah, so the Paladin does start to seem like a little bit more like how the Rogue got nerfed if comparing Divine Smite and sneak attack. Yeah, that's an apt observation.
I think that's fair.
Balcamian likes the idea of punch smiting. I think
yes.
I watched Ted's stream, Nerd Immersion, and he said the Paladin here, he really loves the Paladin, so he's a contrast to me. And he said he thinks there's a lot of give and take in this design that is really interesting, and because he'd say, I like this, I don't like that, I don't like this, and he even stopped to say, like, there's a lot of trade-offs here that I like, that maybe it's a cool new version of the Paladin. And me being someone who doesn't like Paladin but wants to like it and has my opinions about it, this is making me reconsider it. So whether you love Paladin or don't, there's a lot going on here to make you revisit it, I guess.
Sure.
Going into prepared spells, I noticed you can cast so the subclass. We're not there yet. Sorry. Let's back it up. So that was just 5th level. 6th level Paladin subclass feature. You used to have to wait till level 7, and it was like almost always an aura. That's the other thing, is the Paladin used to go 3, 7, 15, and 20 for its subclass. It was the only subclass that you got a level 20 feature, which was cool because it was specific to your subclass, what your capstone was. But man, 3, 7, 15, 20, that's a lot of time to wait for your subclass features. So the Paladin is actually getting buffed just that it's a 3, 6, 10, 14 standard now, in my opinion. It's
Well,
you don't have
getting
to
there,
wait forever.
then it's a little ahead, but getting their capstone at 14, I think that's just fun.
I agree. Aura protection comes one level later. This is the Paladin's quintessential charisma to all saving throws. It now works even if you are incapacitated. It used to be that if you were unconscious, it stopped working, but now it works, which means it will also help you or allies with death saving throws, because if you're unconscious, usually the aura would turn off. But now it stays active, so it will help you with your death saves. And one thing I noticed, I'm going over here to level 17. In 5e, at later levels, the Paladin gets a feature that says your auras now become 30 feet. And now it just says aura of protection becomes 30 feet. So the aura of...
cheesy.
So aura of courage,
right.
If you look here, that protects you from the frightened condition, is actually tacked onto your aura of protection. So it still works, but you're going to see a lot of the auras that Paladins are getting are now being saying, like, this is part of your aura of protection. So that they are still covered by this expansion later on, but it's kind of saying they are all one aura. And I think that's interesting. Because now if you do have multiple Paladins in the party, you can't say, like, oh, well, I have their aura of protection from one of them, and then I have the two subclass auras from both of them. That won't work because those are now being tacked on to aura of protection. So literally, you have to choose one Paladin to gain any aura benefits from. Something I'm noting that.
It is interesting. They'll have to clarify, smooth out some of those rough edges just to make it a little easier to flow, I think, because obviously we'll need to see more subclasses to see how different auras could interact with each other. Is it like,
agreed?
Oh, well, you've decided when you enter the aura, do you decide in the moment, like, which aura is best?
Yeah. It's an interesting thing. Because right now it's just if another Paladin is present, a creature can benefit from only one aura protection at a time. The creature chooses which one when it enters the aura. So that's the only guidance I guess they're giving us at this point. At 9th level, I mentioned, again, I like the Conquest Paladin. I hope they keep that in the game. They're giving you a way to daze and frighten people with your Channel Divinity at level 9.
Yep.
Its number of creatures equal to your charisma. You have to see them. 60 feet range is pretty good. And it lasts for a minute. And even if they succeed, they still become dazed for 1 minute. So dazed. So
that's
the frightened,
really strong.
Yeah, dazed and frightened for 1 minute or until they take damage. Or if they save, they still are dazed for 1 minute or until they take damage. That's pretty cool.
Action economy beast right there.
I agree. I think this is really good.
Or attack. Don't do both.
And if you're dazed, let's just review what that does real quick.
That's okay. So you're a polearm master Paladin. You bop someone from 5 feet away. You take a step. They're dazed, and you could just pick them apart. Like, you're gonna come near me, okay? Or are you gonna try it? What are you doing? Yeah.
So if you're fighting 3 gnolls and they're attacking you, you can make 2 of them. Let's say they both succeed on the saving throw. They're still dazed, and until you attack them, they're gonna remain that way. Because you can only, let's say you're probably only focusing on one of them at a time anyway.
Sure.
So while you're dazed,
controlling a lot.
You are controlling. You can move while dazed, or take one action on your turn, but not both. And you can't take bonus actions or reactions. So their action economy is shut down for 1 minute or until they take damage. So this is a really strong feature. Abjure foes.
It sure is.
Just throwing that out there. Subclass feature, getting it a lot sooner, so I greened it. Radiant Strikes. This is strange to me because so the new Divine Smite is opened up to unarmed strikes and ranged attacks. But this applies to all of your attacks to get an extra D8 of damage, but it only works with martial and simple weapons. So I don't know why it's not just the same stipulations as Divine Smite.
I don't know.
I don't get it.
It's just weird.
Yeah.
It's weird.
It is what it is. It's weird. I say just make it the same stipulations. But yeah.
There are so many things throughout this entire thing where it's like, well, not at my table. Well, not at my table. Not at my table. And
I'm
like, I
fixing
hate
that.
being that guy, but
Uh-huh.
I'm like, that's just what I would do.
Yeah. And then we
I'll have you
mentioned.
fight more powerful monsters. It'll be fun, I promise.
Promise. Trust me. At level 15, we talked about lay on hands getting stronger. You can now cleanse all of these conditions. It's quite a few of them by using 5 hit points of lay on hands. I didn't go back to compare because I know that the Paladin could always do this kind of cleansing thing later on. I don't know if it was this exact same list, but the 5 hit points is consistent. And
so
then
the original lay on hands was just disease or poison, and then cleansing touch was you can end one spell on yourself or a willing creature. So
it was a spell.
Wasn't condition based.
Yes.
It was a spell. Yeah.
Ah.
So
this might be better, honestly, if monsters aren't using spells as much, which it seems like they're kind of moving away from with the Mordenkainen's Monsters of the Multiverse. This might actually be better.
To it.
Yeah. I don't know. And then the capstone at level 18 is when you roll initiative, you get a channel divinity back. Okay. Which, if you can use it to abjure foes, that's pretty cool, I guess.
Well, fair enough, I guess.
Yeah. But at this level, you are going to have 4 uses of channel divinity, so maybe you don't need to get them back.
You're going up against the DM who actually makes you take short rests. Here you go.
Yeah. Let me go to chat real quick. Let's see. Delta, I got flagged for your comment, but I'll let you have it. It looks like you weren't trying to be inflammatory, but YouTube flagged you. So let's see. Question: do you guys think they let the familiar attack as a reaction to combat spells like shield? Okay, yeah. I'm gonna get to find familiar, but if for those who didn't notice, the new find familiar spell allows you to have your familiar attack. It used to be that they couldn't do that. They could use wands and stuff to cast spells, kind of ironically, but they couldn't attack.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to use your reaction, you can have them attack, and they can also keep respawning. Like, you can just like passively do that, it seemed like, if I understood it right. So find familiar is getting weird. So we'll get to that in a little bit, but
unfamiliar.
I don't think it's in, to your question, just the craft, I don't think it's dealing with the reaction combat spells. But if you could, because already if you have a familiar, you usually don't have it to attack because it can't. So making it able to attack and making it so you have to choose between the shield spell or your familiar attacking, that familiar attack better be really good because the shield spell is probably a lot better to hold your reaction for. That's my reaction to the question, at least for now.
See what you did there, and I'm here for it.
Let's see, and then yeah, it's weird that I won't rehash what we already said. I see some commentary on it. We'll just leave it at that. Let's see. Yeah. All right. So this is a lot of my nitpick with the Paladin is a lot of 5e commentary has gotten away from like requiring you to have like a source of power like a deity. And Paladin especially was like, oh, it's your oath. And so, but they basically kept this the exact same of like, you can break your oath, but it's still like, who remembers when they were saying the rogue comes with a lot of Mother May I stuff? And then they kept the cleric's divine intervention, which is the definition of Mother May I, where you literally have to ask the DM to do something and the DM just make a decision. Again,
every Adventurers League's friend. Got it?
Yes. And so if the Paladin breaks their oath, which again is subjective, right? They give you some, like you try to repent and stuff, but if it's willfully violating their oath and shows no sign of repentance, the consequences might be more serious. What are those consequences? At the DM's discretion, an impenitent Paladin might be forced to take a more appropriate subclass or even to abandon the class and adopt another one. This does not go over well with people. Like, I think it's cool. I like the Paladin. I like this stuff of like the Paladin having their oath that matters, but there's not really anyone enforcing it, and it's like, where does the power actually come from?
Yep.
I find it all narratively confusing and bland, But I like
It
in like
is.
Baldur's Gate 2 when there was a Paladin Keldorn as an NPC that could join your party, and he was very much beholden to his order and what they asked him to do, and
Yeah.
trying to move up in it and upholding things and helping those who are coming up in the order, like Animan, another NPC who wanted to become a knight and be accepted into the order. And depending on your choices, he would or would not be, and he might actually go down a really bitter path where he hates the order and becomes a very evil character, and even might attack that other character Keldorn, saying, "I've had it with you." Like, that is interesting to me, but I know that the modern 5e and now 1D&D experience is not really about that. So I don't know why they keep including stuff like this that just doesn't jive with people that aren't
I think
like me, I guess. And
yeah,
it's still DM discretion. Like, it's just asking for friction. That's what
my
I think.
take on that is this is just where it came from. So like if you look at like first edition or second edition, when you look at the Paladin, it's like they weren't really concerned with balance. Like you could have 5,000 experience, and I don't know if these are exactly, but like you might be a level 6 rogue, a level 4 paladin, and the same party with the same amount of experience. But that's because if you just look at it level by level, the paladin was stronger than a fighter. But it came with a whole bunch of other things and hoops you had to jump through because you were getting your powers from a divine being. You are, it was part of the story you wanted to tell. And I just think
Mm-hmm.
between, just to, paint with a broad stroke, we'll just say cultural differences in how things like religion is viewed today versus say they were, 30, 40, 50 years ago. You just have a different um, a different medium, a different vehicle, a different way that people want to approach it because that's what it is, and it's just kind of. I find that sad because like when I think it part of the desire and that's part of the storytelling process for me with a paladin, a cleric, or a warlock. I want to think about my relationship with my patron or my deity. Like how does that work? Like and the organization. Like is there anything where my character is looking at like okay, the organization is saying one thing, but the deity is saying something else. What am I going to choose? Like that becomes all of a sudden something that could be a really cool choice point and story to tell.
Yeah.
And you still can do that. So that's the thing. It's not like you can't do that. I
Yeah.
just I don't know. It makes me sad.
Yeah. I completely agree with you. 100%. As far as like the game design, it's interesting to me that there's no like breaking your pact for the warlock. There's no breaking your domain for
Yep.
the cleric. There's
Yeah.
no, I don't know. I don't know why they keep including this with the paladin
The paladin.
specifically. It's
That's
a.
a really good point.
I wish they would just.
Why
I,
separate it?
yeah. Even though I like this kind of stuff, and like the mechanics they give us don't really support this, is the thing, and so I like they should just say
Oh
something
yeah,
like you can't use channel divinity until you're repentant. But then even then the DM has to decide when you are repentant. So I wish they would, if they want this to be a thing, I want them
sure.
to make it so the DM doesn't have to be the bad guy. That's all I want.
Yeah, absolutely. Because in first edition, in second edition, these earlier versions of paladins, they would be like, you break your oath or whatever, you're a fighter now, and maybe you can find redemption and get back in good graces. But
Yeah. I do.
they're just
I
like, you're a fighter. That was the
yeah.
change.
Phil always brings up good points, and he does point out in chat this does give precedent that it's okay to switch subclasses, which is often like a let's call it retraining. Like, oh, it makes more
Yeah.
sense for my character to have a shift into this other subclass for whatever reason. That is a good thing. It sets a precedent for that. I agree with that.
Well, particularly if you're getting your powers from a divine being or
Yeah.
patron or something like that. If any of them would have
Yeah.
precedent and storytelling believability for that to happen, surely it would
Yeah.
be the cleric, paladin, and
A,
warlock.
a great example is Ford from Critical Role
I
Campaign
was thinking
2.
about Ford this whole time. Yep.
He's a warlock. He comes into conflict with his patron very directly, and he shifts away, and then he starts getting paladin levels for paying like
Was it
fealty and serving the
Wild
Wild
Mother, right?
Mother. Yeah,
Yeah.
and there's no really game mechanics to really support that. You have to work with your DM on it.
You just work together, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so it is kind of strange when they put it in the book, and it almost seems like the DM, especially newer DMs, are going to feel like they have to enforce this. How many horror stories have you heard of someone being like, like even just a month ago, I heard of someone, they had real, like, player to player conflict. It really wasn't about the characters. The players had conflict with each other that was playing out in the game. And one of the players said, like, should your paladin be doing that? And I'm like, you shouldn't even be talking about the paladin right now. You should be talking about, like, the conflict you're having as characters. And so I don't know why this always seems to come up with paladin, but I think it comes back to stuff like this.
Yeah.
That
well, they also used to only be lawful good, so I think some of this stuff comes from deep roots in the game that are just kind of different now.
Yeah, there was a
and just a really quick. I feel like they just say at the DM's discretion, and it's just like that. Those are 4 words to describe. Your session 0 kind of is ongoing, and if the DM is thinking like, this kind of seems a little weird, this feels anti, but it should just be like, it could be a text message, it could be whatever, just like, your paladin seems to be a little odd. Is there something going on here? Like, are you happy with this? Do you want to try and tell a story where there's conflict between you and your deity? Like, what's going on? And then God, you could have a conversation and talk about it and figure it out.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
It just becomes interesting when the player has no interest in, like, what actually makes a paladin a paladin. They just wanted the smite stuff. That happens, I would say that's most paladin players of 5e. They have no interest in an oath. Like, that's just my experience. And that's one reason I say the paladin is my least favorite class in 5e, is because I think the oath is what is supposed to make the paladin most interesting, but it's hand-waved. Similar, people didn't like that the druid can't use metal armor. I think that's interesting, and the lore behind it is interesting, but it's usually hand-waved. But it doesn't cause conflicts like the paladin does. Like, there was a pretty prominent YouTuber, Dawn Forged Cast, who doesn't do stuff anymore and had a lot of controversies. But I remember watching his stuff when I was new to 5e and new to YouTube, around D&D especially. And it was his hill to die on that paladins had to be lawful good. And there were some really awkward videos where, like, he just, like, really doubled down and was angry. And I feel like that was, like, the avatar of what is going on in the game, of, like, this conflict of paladins and their oaths, and, like, forcing players to have oaths when they really don't want them. And anyway, we don't need to talk about this too much longer, but yeah.
I just think if you're a DM and your player wants to play a paladin, you just have to have that conversation.
Yeah.
Figure out what it is that's at the core of wanting to play a paladin, and then figure it out.
Yes. Pro tip to you DMs out there: if someone wants to play a paladin, find out why, because you don't want to enforce something like this. You should be doing that with every
character.
Yes, but for some reason, paladin is especially a problem. So do not skip that conversation. Do not skip it. Like Jake's saying, do it for everybody. But if there's a paladin, think to yourself, I really need to figure this out. Like, seriously. All right, chat. I see Jordan. Because paladins and their players are usually so snooty. I hope not. There's definitely a stereotype for the historical paladin.
The rogue versus paladin memes. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I've seen those memes. I wasn't part of the old play styles, but yeah. Delta says, by the way, is my favorite class Rogue got nerfed hard? Yeah, Rogue is one of my favorite classes. It's definitely the class I played the most, Delta, and I'm really sad with the nerfs it got. Like, Rogue is a favorite, not an overpowered option, and so I go. It's unlisted, but go through. If you go to my channel and go to the stream about the Rogue specifically, and I actually have some videos about the Rogue specifically that aren't unlisted. I've got it all there for you. Where I find it very disappointing that they're taking away a lot of the fun of playing Rogue. That's how I feel. DM's discretion, and and Fred, I saw your comment earlier. The "Mother May I" comment is so condescending to game masters. I totally agree with you. I don't know why. First of all, if that's the internal language they're using, they should change it. And the fact that they shared it and people started using it, I don't like. I shouldn't have brought it up because it makes people start using it again. I should probably just stop saying it, and hopefully they stop saying it too, and then it just goes away. Yeah. So my bad. Dungeon Doctor, hey, good to see you, by the way. Another good YouTube channel. They need to frame the oath breaking as a conversation between Yes, they need to frame it differently. That is a great point. I don't mind them having the blurb, but they should say, if the player is interested in exploring what it means to have an oath, then maybe talk to them about it. That is a great note.
We need to discuss what that means for this character in this game.
That would fix my problems with this, and probably a lot of the cultural issues we're having in the game, if they framed it differently so that the DMs know how to approach it. Great note.
Yep.
So let's see what the Oath of Devotion looks like. First of all, the spells you get for your oath, you can cast one of them without a spell slot. Which I think is cool. So it's basically like... Yeah. So first of all, that means that they're not in conflict if one of them needs to be used with your other spell slots. Where you're like, oh, I need to save the spell slots for this stuff. You have a spell slot to use on this. So that's cool. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
It gives paladins a little bit more of that spell castiness that they kind of lack right now. Sacred Weapon at 3rd level. Bonus action instead of an action in 5e. This is carried over from 5e, but it's changed. Bonus action, not an action anymore. Cool. For 1 minute, add your charisma to attack rolls, so you're more accurate. And you can also, this is new, choose to have it deal radiant damage with your weapon instead of the normal damage. The bright light is the same, and it does make it very clear that it is sunlight later on in one of the other features, because it's always like, is it sunlight or is it not? And then it ends in all the same ways. Smite of Protection. When you use Divine Smite, you can pick an ally and give them a d8 of temporary hit points based on a d8 per level of the spell used for the Divine Smite. This is okay. It again feels like one of those Gloomhaven or 4e D&D type of features, but it's fine. Not exciting, just a thing to get.
It's okay. Yeah.
Aura of Devotion. Again, tacked on to Aura of Protection. Notice you're souping up your main aura or protection, giving it a new effect. It's not a new aura. It is souping up your aura of protection. Immune to Charmed. Cool. And then Holy Nimbus at level 14 as a bonus action. For 1 minute, you get the following things. Your aura of protection gains the following features, I should say. Again, souping up the aura of protection. Enemies that start in the aura take damage equal to your proficiency bonus plus your charisma modifier, which at this level, you're probably looking at like 8 to 9 damage. The aura is filled with bright sunlight. Great. And you can expend a spell slot to use it again if you don't want to wait till you long rest. It has to be a high level spell slot of 4th level or higher, though. So yeah, that's the Oath of Devotion.
It's in your protection, which is, or will be 30 feet eventually, so yeah.
Yes.
And it changes it from an action to a bonus action. Man, at level 20. As an action, okay.
Yeah.
Waste your level 20 action, and now you have to wait for, the legendary monster. Tiamat's going to do nothing in that turn.
Yeah, exactly.
Whatever you're doing.
Yep.
So, yeah, I like that it's at level 14 as well.
Yep. Agreed. So that's the Oath of Devotion, and that's the Paladin. We went through the epic boons already. Just for those, we were talking about the Moon Druid. Here are the primal spells that are abjuration that the Moon Druid can cast. Resistance, which is changed. Remember, that's now a reaction. That actually could be helpful, because now while you're wild shaped, you could react to gain a d4 to a saving throw.
It's god tier. That's too good to pass on.
You and I talked a lot about guidance and resistance before.
Yeah.
Those who are interested, go check out. Jake joined me to talk about the cleric UA, so go check that. Yep. It's unlisted, but it's still on the channel. You just got to go to the channel to find it. Cure Wounds, Healing Word, Mass Healing Word, Non-Detection, Protection from Energy, Freedom of Movement, Anti-Life Shell, Lesser Restoration, Pass Without Trace, Protection from Poison, Greater Restoration, Mass Cure Wounds, Dispel Magic, that could be a good one, Heal, and Power Word Heal. So those right now are the abjuration spells that you could cast while in wild shape. I didn't go and look to make sure that if some of those have a material component, you would not be able to do it. I did not vet them that way. I just looked for abjuration in this.
And you also don't know if that's going to be there too, because
don't know.
We don't have all the information to fully say.
Yep, exactly. Tabletop playlist. It's really interesting to see this conflict between players who want to disassociate mechanics from character archetypes running into the historical dynamics of D&D heavily centering on archetypes. Yeah, exactly. I think Wizards of the Coast needs to realize that and reframe things so that people can know, like, hey, here's historically how this might go down. That might be an interesting thing for your player, instead of just saying, if they break their oath, here's, so. Balcamian says, the Paladin in our party, he was falling from grace, manually decapitated a rogue monk character. Oh, the player, if that character was intentionally obnoxious and just liked getting a rise out of us. Yeah, that sounds like the horror story Paladin I usually hear about, for sure.
Oh man.
Even when I played a Paladin, here's a problem. And I was an experienced player at this point, not as experienced as I am now, but I was playing an Oath of Conquest Paladin in a one shot. It was really like a 2 or 3 shot. And in my backstory, so it wasn't even about my oath, but in my backstory, my father betrayed his oath by taking prisoners, because I was part of like the Order of the Nail, Order of Conquest, like basically evil paladins who are all about like conquesting, but they do it in their mind for benevolent reasons. And my father shamed himself by letting a prisoner go who then did horrible things. So my character in my backstory and in my oath was like, do not show mercy and like don't take prisoners, sort of thing. That was like the character. And so one of the other players took some prisoners, and he was like, this is going to sound weird, but he was kind of a goofy character. And he's like, these 2 prisoners, they're going to be my wives. And I was like, okay. And I went and I slew the prisoners as we were like waiting to be besieged by their like friends that were coming back. We like kind of took over their fortress, and we were going to have to like be besieged by the people trying to take back their fortress. So before they got there, there was like this RP moment. And so I went and I slew the prisoners, and then I went up to the player character and I said, I slew them, no prisoners, sort of thing. And the goofy character suddenly shifted and betrayed the whole party, and it led to this like PvP horrible experience. And so even me, who's like more mindful of these things, it turned into this like this thing. And I was like, I played a Paladin and this happened. Like, so like it was it's tough. It's tough.
When you have an oath like that, it's good. Yeah, that could be a sticky topic for a session 0 to make sure everybody understands. Like, these are going to be this character's buttons. I'm really sorry, but if I'm going to play my character properly and you do something, like, I don't know what to do. Like, I kind of have to say something. I don't know, or maybe you can just figure out how that's going to work.
Yeah,
but you need to be on the same page with that.
Yeah, that's one of the dangers of
PvPs.
That's one of the dangers of one shots. Is it's you usually don't have a session 0. And so when you talk about your backstory, you probably shouldn't withhold too much and be like, this is probably the kind of decision making I'm going to do. But also, like, obviously, like my thought process is I don't know why the player went to PvP over that. And it was like a really awkward experience. And so,
sure.
Yeah. Anyway, that's enough about my history of D&D. What are yours? Share in the comments.
Yeah. That's where I think metagaming is really, sometimes it's the best thing you could do.
Yeah.
No, because if I know this is going to cause an issue, I'm not doing it. Like,
I could make a whole video about this experience and like how it should have gone differently and all the details I'm not sharing here, because obviously I'm just giving like the oversimplified version. But yeah. Anyway, Paladins, man, they seem to always just like spark conflict, whether it's from the Paladin or those around the Paladin. It's interesting.
Let's see. Be like that.
It almost feels like some people want more of a Skyrim role-playing than Gloomhaven role-playing. Yeah, I'd love to hear more about what you think of that tabletop playlist. Like, what is the Skyrim role-playing versus Gloomhaven role-playing? I'd like to know more about that. Delta, Conquest, Paladin, Deus Vult. Yeah, it definitely did feel that way. I like playing evil characters when I can, and I've had varying degrees of success. Usually, if I can tell that people aren't going to jive with an evil character, like just for the nature of being evil, I end up just changing the character very early on. So, just the craft. I run a monthly PvP game for my players, so we can get that out of our system. That sounds pretty fun, actually. Yep. Terrence says, everyone says what my character would do when they should ask what my character should do. Yeah. All the time, even when I'm the DM and there's like player versus player conflict, even when I stop and say like, hey, this isn't fun anymore, let's change this, it still doesn't work sometimes. It's crazy. Anyway, we're over 2 hours into this now, so let's just breeze through some of these.
Let's do it. We got it.
Yeah, so so the spell descriptions, I I wonder if clerics can get these spells because they're just on the divine spell list now. So I think clerics can also use these smites. I'm just gonna throw that out there.
I would say yeah.
Yeah. Bonus action. So first, it's no longer like bonus action. Concentrate on it until you hit. It's now bonus action immediately after you hit a creature with a weapon or an unarmed strike. Yep. So it's basically like you smite the spell, no concentration afterwards. You deal damage. You can banish them. They can keep repeating the save because that was the change they made to the banish spell. But they're still, you don't have to concentrate on it. So that actually makes banishing smite more appealing than like the banishment spell.
I think they're trying to really, really lean into people using some of these because I think a lot of people just didn't because it's like, well, I'm already using Shield of Faith or Protection from Evil and Good, so why would I do that for these smites?
That is another.
Even though it is just a little weird as a follow-up bonus action thing, it's kind of like, well, wait, hold on, isn't that like part of it? But I guess like how else are you gonna do it? I don't know. I kind of understand it, and I like that it's encouraged with the mechanics now. Even though it feels off.
It does feel off. You just have to think of it as like the bonus action is being used to enhance the attack, even though like our brains try to see it as like two separate things. You got to combine them, and then if it's right. Weird. Yeah, I know that you know that. I'm just for everyone else. But like one reason I don't like Paladin so much is like they're supposed to have these cool smites, but they have to concentrate, and like all their spells require concentration. So it's like, is it even that better than just using a divine smite that you don't have to concentrate on and potentially lose the concentration before you land the head all that stuff.
Action economy decisions used to dictate this more than what you actually intended these options to be.
Exactly. So these are good changes overall to how they trigger. Like that alone is good.
Totally agree.
Blinding smite, they can keep repeating the save, but you can blind them. Find familiar, we went over that already. I think. Yeah, we did. Right? Yeah, we did. No, we didn't. So it's now. We talked about it, but we didn't come down here yet. It shares your initiative now. It doesn't roll its own initiative. You can use your reaction to actually have it attack now. You use the magic action for remote viewing. It no longer says you become blind and deaf to your own surroundings when you use the familiar's senses.
Yeah, look at that.
Yeah, you could potentially use both. You can upcast Find Familiar now, so it'll scale a little bit. It'll gain more armor class per spell level, a little bit more hit points. It's almost like I don't know why you would, honestly, but you can. I like at least having the option to upcast if you have the need for some reason.
I guess if you're a warlock and you can do your short rest, get your spell slots back, assuming that's the way it's still going to work when they do warlock, I can see that being a thing.
Yeah.
I guess does this disappear after 24 hours like the Druid one?
No, the Druid one was special in that when you long rest because like you can cast it.
This almost could fall into like your scrying category where it's like, well, it's the end of the day.
Yes.
Might as well really make a beefy familiar.
That's a good point. If you're about to long rest and you've got your 9th level spell slot, I'm gonna
well, here we go.
Let's beef up Gunter. Let's make him a very powerful little, So
exactly.
if you saw me delete my note here, it's because I realized I was missing this with the Fine Steed too, that this is recharges after a long rest. Because I was like, can you just keep resummoning it with this? But no, it has to recharge. So yeah, I think we already covered all this stuff. Here's what the attack looks like. It's super weak. So again, I don't know if it's very effective to be using your familiar for attacking. Reactions. Deliver spell. When you cast a spell with a range of touch, the familiar can deliver the spell with its touch. To do so, the familiar must be within 120 feet. So this is basically the what you could do before of like casting through the familiar, and it requires the familiar's reaction. Searing Smite deals some fire damage. What, this one's still concentration? What's going on? It's because they don't.
Because it keeps taking.
It's because it keeps. That's why. Yeah.
Fire.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
So your bonus action, it still has that to trigger it, but to keep burning them, you have to keep concentrating. Okay, I'm okay with that. Spare the Dying now gives the creature 1 hit point.
Got a buff, didn't it?
Got a little huge buff.
Yeah. Little 1 point buff.
Yeah. So they no longer are still knocked out and still susceptible to just start dying again. Especially if you've been in a small party, sometimes it's really hard to justify using Spare the Dying instead of just trying to retreat first or kill the enemy.
Yeah.
So getting them at least one hit point gets them back up. This is going to be very controversial because people don't like the yo-yo healing word stuff already, and now it's the cantrip can also assist with that. It is an action, blah blah blah.
Takes your action. Yeah, it's interesting. It's certainly more viable. It's not quite like True Strike.
Yeah.
Anymore.
Yeah. Staggering Strike, they fixed it so it's no longer a wisdom check. I think that was a mistake on their part, honestly, when they printed 5e, that they said a wisdom check instead of a wisdom saving throw, because that was one of the reasons people used. I don't remember if it was Staggering Smite, actually. It might have been one of the other ones.
I never noticed that. Interesting.
Which one was it? It was Wrathful Smite, yeah. So it used to be a check instead of a saving throw, which made it easier for it to succeed. They fixed that.
There's your chance to use Hex the way most people think it would work.
Yeah. Strength saving throw. Was this a con save before? Thunderous Smite? Now it's a strength saving throw. Usually, like, the thunder effects are con saves. I'd like to see more strength saves, because that does better against the spellcasters that already want their constitution to be good. So, the rules glossary of what changed. New entries are the dying condition, knocking a creature out. Okay. Yeah. Short rest, telepathy, unconscious condition. Revised entries, like the D20 test, no longer has, like, the heroic inspiration gained from, like, a 1 or a 20. Your allies no longer count as difficult terrain for you. So right now in 5e, if you want to move through your ally space, you can, but it's difficult terrain. Now it's just a normal space for you. That's interesting.
Cool, but that's different for if you're like a halfling, right? And you want to tumble or whatever was that a thing?
Yeah.
That's part of what made them special, whereas before...
That's a good point.
Let people move through their own allied spaces.
I need to go reread how they have the halfling in 1D&D and see if this is... Because maybe they have to change the halfling if this is the case. Because I think the halfling is still special, but that makes it a little less special, I think. I don't know. I'd have to look. I think it was even difficult terrain for them, so maybe it doesn't matter. I'll have to go look. Grappled, they now have movable and escape. Changed a little bit to clean that up. Unarmed strike, grappling, and shoveling are no longer delivered by an attack roll. So that's a little bit of a walk back to more of a 5e version with those as I looked at them. I don't want to go through everything here because I didn't think anything was like major, but yeah. A little bit of like help action now works with tool proficiency. Some cool stuff. This is worth reading through just to see like what has changed in like the rules glossary part of this UA. But let me see if I made any notes of like anything I wanted to see. I noticed the dash action is not in this UA. That is interesting. The dying condition is worth reviewing because especially with its interaction with spare the dying, it was confusing some people. Because basically, when you're dying, if you succeed on your death saving throws, you get 1 hit point, but you remain unconscious and you start short resting immediately. So
yes,
that's interesting. Let's see. A fly speed, they once again made it so if you fall prone, or if someone knocks you prone with the prone condition, you do fall. So they did add that back in. I think they just forgot because they didn't have it in there. But
I think that happens.
Enough of us pointed out. Yeah. Which really shows lack of system mastery from them, which really worries me and is really frustrating. Let me check with chat really quick while we're just kind of streamlining the last stuff here. Sure. Let's see. Phil says, I've seen far too many players treat their teammates like an audience to reveal character, personality, moral quirks that lead to conflicts. Players could treat other players as collaborators. You know, I would probably say this is probably the biggest thing about Critical Role is they now treat their backstories as like these slow reveal, like story elements that are fun to reveal for entertainment and for their streams, and that's really good. But usually in our games, it's better to just share things and not have it be like a surprise.
Yeah, the Critical Role situation is also, I mean, they've been playing together for a very long time, and they're all on the same page when it comes to being invested in each other's fun rather than like how did Phil phrase it, having an audience? Yeah, so it's not an audience, it's something they're working together.
Yes, completely agree. Well, that's a good call out. Phil also says, love the changes to smite spells. Agreed. So tabletop playlist explaining Skyrim role-playing is that the character can kind of be anything regardless of how you're role-playing them, and you can kind of do anything you want at any time. Okay, yeah, I see what you mean there. Skyrim has no mechanical restriction or even really gameplay restriction on role-playing choices. you can complete the College of Winterhold and not be a spellcaster. True. That's a good point. I didn't think of role playing in Skyrim that way, how it's non-restricted. That's an interesting point. Balcamen, Gunter, you like that?
Yeah.
I'm glad someone.
You said Gunter. I was like, all right.
Yeah,
do it.
From the little not Paladin, the little penguin from Adventure Time, Gunter. My wife and I love Gunter. And then let's see, anything else here of note? I have a note here. What did I say? Oh, the hidden condition is also removed. So now there's just the hide action and being invisible, which I think we need a hidden condition. I hope they are not getting rid of it. Because people get so confused about that stuff. I wish they'd codify it as much as they can without being
conditions and labels help. Yeah, they do.
This is like being invisible gives you advantage on initiative, but like being invisible doesn't mean everyone can't see you. Like if you're surprising people when you roll an initiative, there's still a chance you're fighting something that can see you with true sight or something. And being invisible, they can still hear you and might know your location. So this is strange to me.
That is weird. That's really weird.
Yeah. So I can see they're doing some shuffling and like hidden, invisible, surprise, and all these stuff. And I feel like they're not getting it, and they're trying. But I think we're just gonna keep seeing it shift, and we're gonna get confused, because, yeah. They also included rules for short resting here to make it really clear what you can do with that and what would end it. I think that's good that they're clarifying that. Mm-hmm. They are saying, I also noticed the slowed condition, which is one of my favorite new conditions they added, is not in the glossary anymore, which is interesting because, and like the jump action is gone now too. That they mentioned that in their video, which part of the Thief Rogue was that they were allowing you to use the jump action as a bonus action, and that was part of like what was supposed to be cool about it. And now they're gonna have to change the Thief Rogue. I want them to change it anyway, but now that's something specific. If they're gonna take out the jump action, which they said they are, they're gonna have to change. They have to change it now.
They gotta.
Yeah. True Sight. I noticed with seeing through invisibility, they also made it so you also see through. I'll read it. The creature can see creatures that have the invisible condition and objects that are obscured by magic. So I was like, the fog cloud spell creates heavy obscurement. So does True Sight see through a fog cloud created by magic now? I'd like to know.
Say absolutely.
To me, it seems like that is the case, and so I'd like them to be clearer with that, because they said
the only thing that's confusing to me is it's under the invisibility point. But
yeah. And
but that is a magical obscurement. It's just with fog.
Yeah, creatures that have the invisible condition, and objects that are obscured by magic. But it's not always objects that are obscured by magic. So I don't know. So, but maybe this is meant to be like a creatures and objects obscured by magic in general, and like that's the way it's meant to be written. I don't know, but they need to clean that up, I think. All right, so that is the UA. That and a lot of thoughts and little tangents along the way. About Camion says, Jordan, no, it's just hiding from you. Yeah. Their lack of conviction undermines their authority. Phil's talking about the designers for 1D&D. Yeah, their lack of conviction and confidence with what they're doing undermines their authority. I agree with you. And their lack of system mastery really shows. Like, I dare say a lot of the people on the design team for 1D&D are probably more the roleplay heavy folks who are not in the weeds like people like me are, that like really try to get the mechanics down. Because like I'm an amateur and I read some of the stuff they said and like, oh, are they not considering this? And then they start making changes and it's like, oh, I see now that they did not, and they had it pointed out to them, you know? So it gets,
it's this weird, just gray, well, we'll just say it's a fog cloud, because because sometimes they're just throwing different ideas at us to see what we like and what we don't like, and then sometimes it's like, oh, I don't even know. I didn't even realize, you know? So it's like, but they can kind of just say, well, don't pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
Yeah.
Kind of a thing. And I think you're right, because like, even if like one of my favorite games was, you know, the original Destiny, and like they would do an update and change things, and the developers would say, like, even after like an hour of a change being live, it's already like 100 times or 1,000 times more actual experience with the change before their testing period. So it's like they think they understand how it'll work. They have an idea, but until it gets released into the wild, you kind of just don't know.
Yeah. It's a tough thing because it's like, should we give them a lot of leeway because they're testing things? They didn't try to vet it too much because they wanted to see how we react. I don't know, but
just tell them on the survey.
Yeah.
This sucked. This is great.
Yeah. Someone like me, my outlook is kind of like Phil, like it undermines it to me, but I don't know. Delta says it's strange when balanced team makes a rule and don't ask questions like what will happen in this scenario, but I guess they can't ask this question because they never did any of those things. Yeah, it kind of makes you wonder how much they actually play the game. Like they always say, like the designers at Wizard of the Coast, we play a game here. It's like, how much are you playing? Is it just a lunch break, like skirmish? I don't know. Skeletor. When I was a little kid, I thought horseradish was made from real horses. Thanks for throwing that out there.
Yep.
Okay, so I love Skeletor, by the way. Great villain. So that'll do it for this UA. Thanks for joining us, especially those if anyone's been here for the whole 2.5 hours. I told my wife I thought it'd be an hour and a half, so look at us go. I'm gonna go eat lunch. Jake, thank you for joining me. And
my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, if anyone has any thoughts, feel free to come back to the VOD. I'll probably unlist it after a few days because then I don't have people having it suggested to them because it's a very long stream and I'd rather they have YouTube suggesting my other videos to them. But it will still be available. So if you want to come back and comment or if you didn't catch anything, much appreciated. Scott, thank you. Michael, thank you very much. Delta, thank you. Phil, everyone, thank you. Especially all the other great YouTubers that joined in. Always appreciate your support as well. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful weekend and a good adventure if you're having one. And we'll see you later. Bye.